Chapter 942. Lin Yuan, it's not easy to suppress the Aurora Pollen's price now. When I first suppressed the Aurora Pollen's price, the market demanded 10 tons. I only needed to replenish 1 ton of Aurora Pollen in the market. But during this time, the market demanded 10 tons of Aurora Pollen, and I already need to replenish 9 tons of it. At this point, Sun Ningxiang didn't continue to speak. Lin Yuan naturally had his own reasons for wanting to collect the Aurora Pollen to deal with the Sea of Bliss. On the one hand, Sun Ningxiang was asking for Lin Yuan's opinion. She wanted to see the current demand for the Aurora Pollen. She wanted to see if he needed to replenish the Aurora Pollen in the market. On the other hand, Sun Ningxiang was also indirectly reminding Lin Yuan. The Aurora Pollen in the market had reached its limit. Basically, the Aurora Pollen needed in the market had to be replenished by himself. Lin Yuan had originally called Sun Ningxiang to talk about this matter, but he did not expect her to take the initiative to mention it to him. Lin Yuan could also hear the meaning in Sun Ningxiang's words and could not help but admire her keen sense of smell. Sun Ningxiang, from now on, gather all the Aurora Pollen in the Dew Immortal Garden. Don't let any of it flow into the market. The collection of Aurora Pollen over the past few months has achieved its initial goal. It's time to let go and let the price of Aurora Pollen soar. Sun Ningxiang immediately replied, I'll arrange it now. At the same time, I'll let the Dew Immortal Garden collect as much Aurora Pollen as possible tonight through the channels. Our Dew Immortal Garden has cooperation with many chambers of commerce. At this time, those chambers of commerce should give us some face. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. Just when the Aurora Pollen's price was destined to skyrocket, Sun Ningxiang was taking drastic measures from under the pot. At that time, even if the Sea of Bliss gave up all its face as a veteran faction, it would not be able to get much Aurora Pollen from the market. That's right, the Aurora Pollen's price was skyrocketing. How could those angelfish of bliss in the water eat it? Lin Yuan secretly guessed in his heart. He did not know how flustered the Sea of Bliss, which was becoming more and more arrogant in cooperation with him, would be tonight. After talking to Sun Ningxiang about this matter, Lin Yuan immediately returned to Star Web. After returning to Star Web, Lin Yuan found that in addition to the person who had just accepted the exchange message, another person had also received the exchange message. Lin Yuan's eyes immediately lit up. Lin Yuan clicked on the first person's message and was about to chat. However, when he saw the message, he frowned slightly. Pretty guy holding an umbrella. Can your exchange message guarantee the safety of the phase under the world cleansing? Pretty guy with an umbrella. I need to go to the spirit guards with your store to do a notarization. If my fae dies while evolving into a myth breed, your store will have to pay a premium as compensation. This person was really realistic. The first thing he talked about was compensation. Although it was human nature to protect one's own interests, this demand for compensation was a little too high. Even some Emperor-class experts from peak factions would return a favor and help a friend's spiritual item undergo the world cleansing. Accidents could also happen. No one could guarantee that this kind of accident would happen or not. However, this person was asking him to bear all the risks, which made Lin Yuan doubt this person's sincerity. However, he had the creation breed culling butterfly in his hands, and its power world could indeed guarantee the safety of the other party's fae. For the sake of the 10% world grace and for genius to evolve to Diamond X as soon as possible, Lin Yuan patiently replied. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, it's fine to have the spirit guards notarized, but our store cannot accept the premium as compensation. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, if your fae really dies under the world cleansing, our store can compensate you with any bronze/epic fae. Our store will also be responsible for upgrading your fae to its original grade. I wonder if that's possible? After replying to the message, Lin Yuan was ready to see what request the next person who had received the exchange message had made. Lin Yuan didn't expect the expert called Pretty Guy holding an umbrella on Star Web to reply instantly. Pretty Guy holding an umbrella, that's fine, but when the spirit guards notarize it, I need to add another condition. Pretty Guy holding an umbrella. Even if my Triceratops rhinoceros isn't dead, if its roots are damaged by the world cleansing and can't be restored, your store will have to compensate according to the price. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan's face darkened. At that moment, Lin Yuan didn't want to waste any more words with this pretty guy holding an umbrella. This pretty guy holding an umbrella's request was simply a scam. If it wasn't dead and he had to compensate according to the price, wouldn't that be the same as getting a main fey for free? Furthermore, this person had contracted a suzerain/fantasy V Triceratops rhinoceros. As a very outstanding defense-type fey, the Triceratops rhinoceros' 3 long horns propped up a horn shield and could parry other phase attacks. Its thick rhinoceros hide also had a certain immunity against elemental abilities. If Lin Yuan had contracted a Triceratops rhinoceros and relied on its outstanding defense, Lin Yuan would dare to bet on whether the Triceratops rhinoceros could obtain the chance to become a myth. However, the expert called Pretty Guy holding an umbrella didn't dare to put his all into the gamble. This meant that this pretty guy holding an umbrella expert didn't have the heart of an expert at all. He was only thinking about how to survive and schemed against others to take advantage of him. Lin Yuan didn't want to cooperate with such a person, but for the sake of the 10% world cleansing, Lin Yuan forcefully suppressed his emotions and replied with an okay. Just as Lin Yuan was planning to invite Pretty Guy holding an umbrella to the royal capital, Pretty Guy holding an umbrella sent another message. Pretty Guy holding an umbrella. Since I'm done talking, let's talk about your request. Pretty Guy holding an umbrella. I feel that the 10% world grace is a little unreasonable. What do you think? Upon seeing this message, Lin Yuan felt his fist itching. What do I think? I don't want to see it at all. Lin Yuan thought he had a good temper, but he really couldn't suppress his anger because of this pretty guy holding an umbrella. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and gritted his teeth as he replied. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, get lost. You aren't fit to be an Emperor-class expert. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, your Triceratops rhinoceros is only fit to stay below myth breed in your hands. After sending the message, Lin Yuan blacklisted Pretty Guy holding an umbrella and didn't give him a chance to continue speaking. He then recovered his mood and checked the second expert who had received the exchange message and sent him a private message. Yukio Su's Calamity. Hello, my 2 fays are currently at the pinnacle of Myth 2. I wonder if your store can accept the Myth 3 world cleansing? The third one. End of this chapter. Chapter 943. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw this message, and he replied. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, of course. Lin Yuan didn't expect this expert with the star web account called Yukio Su's to be so awesome. He actually had 2 pinnacle Myth 2 fays. The blessing of heaven and earth that descended after the Myth 3 world baptism was completely different from the blessing of heaven and earth that descended after the Myth 2 world baptism. The world grace that descended after the Myth 3 world cleansing was to help the phase body martial transformation. In essence, it was more than 10 times stronger than the world grace of Myth 2. 10% of the world grace of 2 Myth 3 phase would condense a large number of spirit chi crystals. These spirit chi crystals would be enough for Genius to evolve to Diamond X/Fantasy I. After Genius evolved to Diamond/Fantasy I, there would still be a lot of spirit chi crystals left for Lin Yuan to use at will. Lin Yuan felt that he could finally return to the feeling of a spirit chi crystal nouveau riche. However, he immediately started to wonder. If this star web expert called Yukio Su's had 2 pinnacle Myth 2 fays, then it should be possible for them to help each other. If these 2 fays could help each other, it should be possible for them to both reach Myth 3. Moreover, someone who could nurture 2 fays to the pinnacle of Suzerain/Myth 2 did not seem to lack resources. Such people often resided in major factions. Even if they were not, they should be enthusiastic about accepting missions like Duanhe. Otherwise, they would not be able to obtain the resources to nurture 2 fays to the pinnacle of Myth 2. However, this expert with the star web account called Yukio Su's had asked him for help. This was really strange. At that moment, there was a 2.5-meter tall sturdy man on the back of this star web account. This sturdy man had a short buzz cut, and his muscles bulged, looking very powerful. However, once one looked at this sturdy man's face, one would find that he did not look fierce. Instead, he was as simple and cute as a big bear. However, this sturdy man's exposed skin was covered with nail scars. These neatly arranged fine nail scars did not look like they were caused by external injuries. Instead, they looked like plant roots that wanted to grow out of the flesh. The strange and dense nail scars made the muscular man's skin look rather strange. These spike-like scars would occasionally move on the sturdy man's body, just like earthworms hidden under the soil that would occasionally move. Every time this happened, the burly man would tremble uncontrollably and frown, as if he was enduring great pain. However, the burly man was already used to this kind of pain. Apart from his trembling body and tightly furrowed brows, the movement of the scar didn't affect the robust man's movements in the slightest. Upon seeing Lin Yuan's reply, the burly man's tensed expression relaxed for some reason. A faint look of hope appeared on his face as he repeatedly muttered to himself, "Of course, of course." It was as though Lin Yuan had added the word, "of course," in front of the word, "can," giving the burly man immense confidence. At that moment, the dense nail scars on the burly man's body moved violently as if they were walking on Huarong Road. The moment these spike-like scars moved violently, the pain from his body, spirit, heart, and soul forced the burly man to log out of Star Web. Immediately after, the burly man's body, spirit, heart, and soul erupted with a willpower amidst the intense pain, forcibly suppressing the 4 kinds of pain at the 4 levels. Then, ignoring the lingering nail scars on his body, he logged onto Star Web again and sent a very long message to Lin Yuan after trembling and hopeful. Yukio's complaint of calamity. My 2 suzerain/myth 2 phase are very special. They can't withstand any attack during the world cleansing. If they do, they will turn into ashes. Yukio Su's calamity. In this case, can the exchange continue? After sending this message, the burly man closed his eyes as though he was quietly waiting for a judgment that would decide his fate. Upon seeing Yukio Su's calamity's message, Lin Yuan did not feel anything wrong at first. However, Lin Yuan's face immediately revealed a pretty boy's puzzled expression. Yukio Su's calamity had said that his 2 suzerain/myth 2 phase could not withstand any blow under the world cleansing, which was a little exaggerated. Among Lin Yuan's many contracted phase, Genius was a functional Fey and did not possess any offensive ability. Therefore, when Genius reached the pinnacle of Myth 2, he would need to avoid letting Genius receive direct attacks from the world cleansing if he wanted to survive it. Otherwise, Genius, which did not possess combat ability, would easily suffer serious damage under the world cleansing. Even a functional Fey like Genius, which did not possess offensive ability, would not die immediately after receiving the world cleansing's attack. Although a functional Fey did not possess combat ability, as long as its grade reached the level of a suzerain/myth breed, its body's toughness would not be bad. It would not be turned into ashes under the world cleansing's attack. It seemed that Yukio Su's calamity's 2 suzerain/myth 2 phase should be very special. However, the more special a Fey was, the more valuable it was in a specific aspect. Therefore, it should be easy for Yukio Su's calamity to find experts for help by relying on its Fey's special abilities. Lin Yuan could not figure out the Yukio Su's calamity's situation, so he simply did not think about it. He did not ask what the Yukio Su's calamity's phase were. It might be difficult for others if Yukio Su's calamity's world cleansing attack could not hit his 2 phase. However, it was very easy for Lin Yuan to do it. Since Yukio Su's calamity had taken the initiative to make this request, Lin Yuan felt that the reward for exchanging information needed to be increased accordingly. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, no problem. I can guarantee that your 2 phase will not be attacked by the world cleansing. When the burly man, whose name was Yukio Su's calamity on Star Web, saw Lin Yuan's message, his eyes suddenly widened. The glimmer of hope in his dim eyes suddenly magnified. Finally, they shone like 2 suns that had broken through the shackles of the mortal world. The burly man's usually gloomy eyes finally had a long-awaited sunrise. At that moment, the burly man's body trembled slightly, but this time, it was not because of the pain from those nail scars. Instead, it was because of the burly man's agitated emotions that caused his body to tremble uncontrollably. The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 944. At the same time, when hope appeared in the burly man's eyes, the hatred that was buried in the depths of his soul and never dared to think about welled up. The sturdy man's simple and adorable face instantly turned ice cold. At that moment, the burly man whose name was Yukio Su's Calamity on Star Web saw another message from Lin Yuan. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. But this request of yours requires a creation breed Fae to activate the Law World's power. I'm sure you know this. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. I believe you've been looking for an Emperor-class expert to help your 2 spiritual items through the world cleansing. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. If that's the case, then my previous offer is too shabby. However, I don't intend to increase the price by too much. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. Since you are going to use 2 Faes to undergo the world cleansing, then double the price and add 50 source-type life forms according to the exchange message. When Lin Yuan changed the price, he had also given it some thought. Lin Yuan's main purpose for issuing the trade news was the 10% world grace, so his remuneration did not increase too much. He only asked for an additional 50 source-type items. However, when the burly man on Star Web called Yukio Su's Calamity saw Lin Yuan's message, he suddenly thought of something. His face turned embarrassed, and his ears turned red. It made the sturdy man's honest face look even cuter, like a large teddy bear. Moreover, the teddy bear was scratching the back of its head with its hand, looking helpless. The burly man replied with a red face and a deflated stomach. Yukio Su's Calamity. That, I don't have money now. I don't have any heaven and earth phase or source-type life forms. Yukio Su's Calamity. If possible, I can choose to give you all the world grace after the Fae evolves. Yukio Su's Calamity. Or when my Fae breaks through to Myth 3, I can think of ways to earn money. Yukio's complaint. Can I double the amount of heaven and earth phase and source-type items that I need to pay after I earn money? After sending this message, the burly man added another sentence in embarrassment. Yukio versus Calamity. Don't worry, I'll do my best to compensate you as soon as possible. Lin Yuan could not help but be dumbfounded when he saw the message from Yukio's Tales of Calamity. Just how thick was this person's skin? He actually dared to act shamelessly? Since when could a Star Web store issue an item exchange on credit? However, he then carefully read through all the messages sent by the drifting world's tribulations. Lin Yuan realized that this message was not meant to tease him. Instead, it had the sincerity of a person being forced into a desperate situation. Yukio's Tale of Calamity had asked for his help in helping a Fae undergo the world cleansing and break through to Myth 3. He had also expressed that he possessed Emperor-class power. Therefore, after helping the 2 Pinnacle Suzerain/Myth 2 Faes face to face with the world cleansing, there was no possibility of Yukio Tale Calamity reneging on its promise. However, under such circumstances, Yukio Tale of Retribution was still willing to offer up all the grace of heaven and earth. This meant that Yukio Tale of Retribution had no other choice. Yukio's Tale of Calamity had offered up all of the grace of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to cutting off the future of his spiritual being. Such a choice could be said to be no different from putting oneself in a hopeless situation to survive. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw another message from Yukio Su's Calamity. Yukio's complaint. If you really don't agree, I can swear by the rules to be your servant for 3 years. Yukio's complaint. During these 3 years as your servant, you can ask me to do anything. Yukio's complaint. But after 3 years as your servant, I have to leave to do something I have to do. Lin Yuan fell silent when he saw the message from Yukio's complaint. Perhaps it was because he had once been deep in the darkness and struggled to climb in the mud of the darkness. Lin Yuan felt that he seemed to be able to understand this Emperor-class expert called Yukio Tale of Calamity on Star Web. If he had not been forced into a desperate situation, how could an Emperor-class expert be willing to put down his dignity, give up his freedom, abandon himself, and hand over his fate to a stranger for 3 years? After a few seconds of silence, Lin Yuan replied. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, I'll help you undergo the world cleansing first. We'll discuss the other conditions and rewards in person. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, you can call me when you come to the royal capital. After saying that, Lin Yuan sent his phone number to Yukio Tale of Calamity. Lin Yuan did not know much about Yukio Tale of Calamity, so he could not talk about making Yukio Tale of Calamity swear by the rules to be his servant for 3 years. At the same time, according to Yukio Tale of Calamity's words, Lin Yuan felt that Yukio Tale of Calamity must be a person with a story. This story was likely related to what Yukio Tale of Calamity had to do after 3 years. Therefore, Lin Yuan intended to reserve the opportunity to choose the reward until he met Yukio Tale of Calamity himself. Then, he would choose whether to let Yukio Tale of Calamity give him 2 Heaven and Earth phase and 110 Source-type lifeforms. Or would he swear by the rules to be his guardian for 3 years? Lin Yuan did not like the title and identity of a servant. Back then, Listen had used the willpower rune to issue a servant oath to him, but Lin Yuan treated Listen no differently from the others in the mansion. Lin Yuan was waiting for Yukio Tale of Calamity's reply, but he still did not receive a reply after waiting for a long time. Lin Yuan clicked on Yukio Tale of Calamity's Star Web information to check and found that he had unknowingly logged off Star Web. Lin Yuan sighed. I wonder what Yukio Tale of Calamity is doing. He's gone while we were discussing something. Why is he so unreliable? However, Lin Yuan had already sent the message. He just had to wait for Yukio Tale of Calamity to call him. At that moment, in a narrow and dilapidated house, a burly figure wrapped in a robe was rolling violently on the ground. The burly figure in the robe was obviously enduring the pain, gritting his teeth to prevent himself from groaning. As he struggled and rolled, his sweat soaked the black robe, leaving watermarks on the ground. After a while, the burly figure lay on the ground on his back and lifted his cloak, revealing a face stained with water. There was obviously more water on his face than on his neck. It was unknown whether it was sweat or tears. In any case, the eyes of the burly man lying on the ground were red. The burly man raised his hand with difficulty and looked at the nail scar that would flare up every few minutes. After a long while, he stood up shakily. The burly man looked at the night in the distance as if he wanted to find a light in the night that could reach his heart. After Lin Yuan finished dealing with the matters at hand, he wondered if he should go to Chime's live-streaming room to take a look. At that moment, Chime's live-streaming room could be said to be the most lively place in the entire Star Web. Bai Hao, who was ranked first in Chime's live-streaming room, could now be considered the most excited and happy person in the entire Star Web. Second place was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 945. Bai Hao had been sparring with Wang Fan in the training room, hoping to hone their coordination. In order to get into the semi-finals of the S tournament, they had to make a dash for it. Bai Hao was a high-explosive damage dealer. He was the center of the team, and his fighting style was very aggressive and crazy. However, Bai Hao also knew his weakness, which was that he could not last long enough. If he couldn't secure victory with his 3 strikes and injure the enemy Fei, he would be useless. As for Wang Fan, he was a support. After Wang Fan got to know Lin Yuan and Lu Jie, he had made some adjustments to his phase equipment and combat style. As Radiant's 100 sequence members, Bai Hao and Wang Fan had trump cards that they had yet to reveal. Moreover, Bai Hao and Wang Fan's guild club had never become an A-ranked guild club. Their best result was only 5th place in the S tournament. If they won the semifinals this time, they would be able to set a new record for the club guild in the S tournament. They might even be able to get into the top 3 this year, allowing their club guild to become an A-ranked club guild. Therefore, when the time came, Bai Hao and Wang Fan decided to go all out. Bai Hao and Wang Fan were prepared to reveal some of their trump cards in this year's S tournament. However, because both sides usually hid their trump cards, the two of them did not have much cooperation in terms of trump cards. Bai Hao had given up on thinking about the relationship between Black and Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess after 2 days of crazy training. Even though Bai Hao had let go of all the distractions in his mind, he would still hear the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's voice from time to time. Not only did the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's voice not distract Bai Hao, but it also gave him an inexplicable will to fight. However, Bai Hao did not expect that the team leader would bring Wang Fan's girlfriend, Anna, into the training room while he was training with Wang Fan, saying that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had appeared for a live broadcast. When Bai Hao heard the news from the leader, he left Wang Fan and Anna behind and logged into Star Web in the training room. As a result, Bai Hao found that the GIF that was originally blocking the screen had disappeared. He had entered the live stream thousands of times and would even enter the live stream when there was no one broadcasting. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared where the GIF was supposed to be. This beautiful figure collided with Bai Hao's eyes and directly merged with the voice that had already resounded in Bai Hao's soul countless times. At this moment, Bai Hao suddenly thought of a sentence. This man is like a rainbow, only when he meets the person above him will he know that he exists. Bai Hao stared blankly at the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess, not even willing to blink. After looking at the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess' true appearance for a while, Bai Hao suddenly felt that the little white cat in the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's arms was a little irksome. Moreover, this little white cat had a little too many tails. The sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's fingers slid across the little white cat's body, but the little white cat's face revealed an aggrieved and unwilling expression. Bai Hao couldn't help but feel jealous. If Bai Hao could come to the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's side through the livestream, he would definitely grab the little white cat and say this. You really don't know how lucky you are. You don't want me to come. Although Bai Hao was in a daze, his hands didn't slow down. The Star Web live-streaming gift included a bouquet of 100 hibiscus flowers that cost 10,000 radiance dollars, and Bai Hao was continuously sending 3 bouquets per second. As a Radiance 100 sequence member and the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's live-streaming room's ranking, Bai Hao received a notification when he entered the live-streaming room. However, the old fans in the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's live-streaming room were already used to Bai Hao's appearance and crazy gifting. This was because every time the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess live-streaming room was live-streaming, Bai Hao would be there and never be absent. In fact, many sparrow-voiced lowly goddesses fans would occasionally enter the live-streaming room when she was not live-streaming and see Bai Hao. It could be said that Bai Hao appeared in the live-streaming room more than the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's live-streaming room. At that moment, Bai Hao saw a message flash in his Star Web mailbox. He opened it and saw that it was a message from Wang Fan. Zhong Feng Wang Fan, damn. I didn't expect the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess to be so good-looking. It's no wonder you like her voice. Zhong Feng Wang Fan, but the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess is so beautiful. Why didn't she show her face when she started live streaming? If she had shown her face, her popularity should have been higher than now, right? Bai Hao curled his lips when he saw Wang Fan's message. He didn't expect Wang Fan to log into Star Web immediately like him. However, he had never heard that Wang Fan was a fan of the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess. Wasn't Wang Fan, who was a henpecked man, always afraid of Anna? Since when did he dare to talk about a woman's looks on Star Web? Based on Wang Fan's message, this was the first time Bai Hao felt that Wang Fan was such a shallow person. He didn't like the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's voice because she was pretty. He wasn't a shallow person. Moreover, regardless of whether the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess showed her face or not, looking at the number of people in the live-streaming room, it would immediately become one of the top 10 most popular live-streaming rooms in the attractive section. What was it capable live-streaming? It was a tactical retreat. Seeing that the number of people in the live-streaming room was still rising, Bai Hao suddenly felt a sense of crisis. As the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess showed her face, the number of people in the live-streaming room had reached 4 times the previous number. In that case, he might not be able to keep his first position on the list. Just as Bai Hao was thinking about how to keep his first position, a fan in the live-streaming room rewarded the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess with 3,100 hibiscus bouquets, which cost 10,000 radiance dollars each. This amount of money directly allowed the fan to climb to the 3rd position on the list, and was not far from the 2nd position. Bai Hao immediately paid attention to this person's ID, and his eyes widened. Bai Hao saw that this ID was Unknown Flame, Anna. Isn't this Wang Fan's wife? Just as Bai Hao was about to ask Wang Fan what was going on, he realized that Wang Fan had sent him another message. His tone was like Little Red Riding Hood who had been hollowed out by the big bad wolf. Heavy Frontier Wang Fan, Bai Hao. If I didn't think that sparrow-voiced lowly goddess showing her face would hurt you and specially came to comfort you, Anna wouldn't have followed me to the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess's live-streaming room. Upon seeing Wang Fan's message, Bai Hao immediately knew what was going on. Anna had always been a senior lover of good looks, and she liked anything that looked good. She would also enter a fanatical state when she saw something beautiful that amazed her. The reward just now was obviously because Anna liked the sparrow voice lowly goddess's beauty and became a fan. Bai Hao swallowed his saliva. If Anna also became a fan of the sparrow voice lowly goddess, how could Wang Fan save money? Could he still borrow money from Wang Fan in the future? Chapter 947. In the end, the sparrow voice lowly goddess live streaming room had gradually evolved into a battlefield between Black's fans and Lin Yuan's fans. Chimey frowned slightly when it saw the live streaming room becoming increasingly noisy. Some people praised Black, Chimey was willing to listen to it, while others praised Lin Yuan. However, Chimey didn't like it when people praised Lin Yuan and belittled Black, and when people praised Black belittled Lin Yuan. Chimey suddenly recalled a song that Lin Yuan had taught it and hummed softly. Wearing a bamboo hat in the misty rain, quietly waiting for the sun to break through the clouds. Listening to the three pure ones' wondrous sound, so I hear it. With a flip of the hand, the fate is reversed, and with a flip of the hand, the universe is restored. There is no need to differentiate between Daoists and monks. The Frostflower sword is carved with a trace of loneliness and tenacity, treading over 1,000 mountains to cleanse the demonic souls. A youth can be arrogant and dare to scold heaven and earth for being heartless. It doesn't matter if it's an opportunity or the root of calamity. Playing a song while intoxicated, a dream or me, which is real. One can't forget one's love, causing one's heart to be trapped. Looking at the path of immortality, one can see the rain and snow far away. There is no harm in facing people with a smile when you are lonely. Chimey's voice was filled with spirituality. The instant the song sounded, the noisy live streaming room instantly calmed down. Everyone seemed to see a youth who wasn't afraid of hardships and dangers. He was maintaining his original heart and constantly moving forward step by step. It was as though this tenacious and fearless youth was standing in front of them and looking at them with clear eyes. At that moment, Chimey's heart was filled with anger, so its voice was slightly cold when it sang. However, it was also this slight coldness that made the youth who dared to scold heaven and earth for being heartless filled with a kind of cold temperament. This cold temperament didn't allow the youth to have the arrogance that surfaced on the surface. There was only a firm and unyielding character hidden in his body. Chimey had gone from a songstress bird that wasn't even a fae to a clear sound Luan sparrow that dared to devour the Luan phoenix's bloodline as a sparrow. It had understood many things and principles. Although Chimey still maintained its original appearance in front of Lin Yuan, it had experienced the hardships and difficulties of growth. Lin Yuan had always been moving forward with a trace of tenacity and loneliness. No matter how lonely he would treat others with a smile. In Chimey's heart, the perfect Lin Yuan was now being criticized by others. This made it want to crush the head of the audience in the live streaming room. At that moment, StarWeb's chief editor, Kong Chi, sighed and looked at Tian Ningning, who had a bitter expression. You'll have to figure this out on your own. If you really don't want to do crisis PR for Black without Black knowing, you can discuss it with him after he goes online. Tian Ningning raised her head to look at Kong Chi. Her eyes were filled with hope and stubbornness. Chief editor, you said that you would look for Star Tower and see if they could contact Black and Lin Yuan to have a duel. Is that not going to work? Hearing Tian Ningning's words, Kong Chi had a strange expression on her face. Logically speaking, as the chief editor of Star Web, if he made a request to the Star Web Tower, the Star Web Tower would definitely value it. Furthermore, he contacted Yu Yen, the supervisor of the Star Tower, and expressed his intentions. Yu Yen agreed readily as well, and he said that he would try to contact them and help them. But he didn't expect that in less than 20 minutes, Yu Yen would tell him that he couldn't help him. His tone was even slightly blaming himself, as if he had pushed Yu Yen into a pit of fire. Kong Chi was unable to wrap her head around the change in Yu Yan's attitude. Kong Chi thought that she had a rather good relationship with Yu Yen in private. However, Kong Chi didn't know that if Yu Yen was standing in front of her, he would definitely give her a scolding. He would even give her a few heart-wrenching punches. When Yu Yen heard that his old friend was looking for him for help, he didn't even think about it before agreeing. However, when investigating Lin Yuan and Black Star's information, Yu Yan realized that he didn't have the authority as the supervisor of the Star Tower. He even had the authority to retrieve the information of the Radiance 100 sequence members. Therefore, the cautious Yu Yan contacted his supervisor in the Radiance Palace and applied to increase his authority level. After Yu Yan increased his authority level, he realized that his authority was still insufficient when investigating Lin Yuan and Black's information. This made Yu Yan's back involuntarily break out in a cold sweat. At the same time, Yu Yan was also nervously guessing Lin Yuan and Black's identity. As the supervisor of the Star Tower, Yu Yan knew better than anyone how the Radiance Federation's star web was structured. Anyone who wanted to encrypt their identity on the star web had to go through the Three Lords. For one of the Three Lords to give Lin Yuan and Black such high authority level, it proved that Lin Yuan and Black's identity was honorable. He had investigated Lin Yuan and Black's identity twice today, so the Lord who had encrypted Lin Yuan and Black must have known about it. Yu Yan was really afraid that he would be held accountable by one of the Three Lords tomorrow morning. Looking at Tian Ningning's stubborn gaze, Kong Qi didn't say anything and didn't know what to say. She could only turn around and return to her office to do other work. When Tian Ningning saw Kong Qi's reaction, she knew that Kong Qi had no other way. Tian Ningning squeezed the phone in her hand and forced herself to calm down. She was prepared to wait for Long Tao's exclusive reporter to return her call. At that moment, Tian Ningning's phone rang. However, the number was an unknown number that Tian Ningning didn't save. However, Tian Ningning still picked it up. Tian Ningning heard a serious voice on the other side. "Is this Black's exclusive reporter? I'm Long Tao." Long Tao didn't expect such a thing to happen on StarWeb after the Nix assembly ended. As someone who came from a top faction, Long Tao didn't need to think to know what was going on. If this had just happened, Long Tao would have stood up for Black as the only direct descendant of the Coiled Dragon Valley's younger generation. This matter definitely wouldn't have developed to this extent. It was true that Long Tao and Lin Yuan were friends, but Long Tao had also experienced life and death with Black. Long Tao felt that when he was facing Lin Yuan and Black, he seemed to be a little conflicted. When he had first come into contact with Black, he felt that Black had a familiar feeling. Now that Long Tao carefully savored this feeling, he realized that this feeling came from the hurried meeting with Lin Yuan in the Radiant Moon Palace. But later, when he saw Lin Yuan again, the familiarity with Black had automatically fed back to Lin Yuan. It was as though Lin Yuan was also a companion who had experienced life and death. After hurriedly saying a few words to Tian Ningning, Long Tao hurriedly hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Long Tao called Lin Yuan. However, after calling, Long Tao realized that Lin Yuan didn't pick up his phone. Long Tao didn't know if Lin Yuan didn't bring his phone with him or if Lin Yuan couldn't hear the phone call on StarWeb. The second one, end of this chapter. Chapter 948. Although Long Tao did not know the identity of Chief Guard Ye's disciple at the Great Night Assembly, he had exchanged contact information with Lu Jie, who was also her disciple. Long Tao thought about it and decided to call Lu Jie. He wanted to see if Lu Jie could contact Lin Yuan or if he could not contact Lin Yuan personally to settle this matter. Since the younger generation of those top factions and veteran factions were trying to curry favor with Lin Yuan, then someone with a high enough status to stand out. This person with a high enough status to Lin Yuan would have the final say. In fact, Long Tao wanted to call Lu Jie not only to defame him. It was also for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan had the Radiant Light Medal and was destined to fight for the Radiance Envoy position. If this matter made Lin Yuan's image appear too aggressive, then this aggressive image would only be a hindrance on his path to becoming a Radiance Envoy in the future. It would not help him at all. Lu Jie, who had just upgraded his sacred source life form in the land of spirit suppression, took a deep breath and was about to finish the bowl of suzerain silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar that Lin Yuan had given him. Then, with the suzerain silver stamen gold luster kasha nectar's ability to protect the soul and cleanse the soul's impurities, the insect queen could control the insect species tumor Fei in front of it, which would only increase its strength by several times. At that moment, the phone in Lu Jie's left pocket rang. The ringing in his left pocket made Lu Jie raise his brows slightly. When Lu Jie had decided to hide his identity at the Great Night Assembly, he had made preparations in advance. He had gotten an extra phone and applied for an additional Star Web account. The phone in his left pocket was specially prepared by Lu Jie. Lu Jie took out the phone in his left pocket and picked up the call when he saw that it was Long Tao. Lu Jie and Long Tao knew each other before. Now that he was using another identity to communicate with someone he already knew, Lu Jie had a special feeling. Lu Jie seemed to know why Lin Yuan had split into 3 identities on Star Web. But now that he thought about it, he had 3 identities on Star Web. The Spirit Guard's Chief Guard's disciple, Radiance 100 Sequence Number 30, Heart of Insect Swarm Lu Jie, Sky City's White Robe General Manager. Now, no matter which identity Lin Yuan appeared with, Lu Jie could naturally follow beside Lin Yuan. This feeling made Lu Jie feel very at ease. Following in Lin Yuan's footsteps was also his pursuit as Lin Yuan's retainer. Lu Jie was still wondering why Long Tao was looking for him, but after picking up Long Tao's call, Lu Jie's frown deepened. After listening to Long Tao explain the whole story, Lu Jie asked Long Tao aloud, "Did you contact Lin Yuan before contacting me?" Hearing that, Long Tao said without hiding anything, "Before contacting you, I called him twice, but he didn't pick up. In order to solve this matter quickly, I called you." Upon hearing Long Tao's words, Lu Jie said in a deep voice, "Leave this to me." After saying that, Lu Jie hung up the phone without telling Long Tao what he planned to do. This made Long Tao feel a little uncertain. The Chief Guard's disciple should not know Black. If Lu Jie made the final decision on Star Web and said that Black could not be compared to Lin Yuan at all, then those veteran factions and the top faction's younger generation that had not joined the battle would probably immediately join the battle. At that time, not to mention Lin Yuan, Black would definitely be seriously affected. After thinking about it, Long Tao, who had originally planned to go to the breeding room to upgrade his phase, quickly logged on to Star Web. At that moment, Long Tao saw that Lu Jie had already posted, "I don't know who is stronger between Black and Lin Yuan. They even sat together for dinner tonight, and I didn't see them thinking about competing to see who is stronger." Star Web had an identity authentication function. Although Lu Jie's Star Web account was new, he had already used it to go through Star Web authentication. Lu Jie's identity authentication was only a short 6 words, but these 6 words were destined to make Lu Jie the Radiance Federation's most distinguished younger generation. These 6 words were the Young Palace Lord of Night End Palace. When Long Tao saw Lu Jie's post, he immediately smiled and hurriedly reposted it. At the same time, he asked Zhao Xiaochun, Fong Duo, and the others from the Dragon Gate Guild Club to repost Lu Jie's post. As Long Tao reposted it, Lu Jie's post was soon reflected in the eyes of the majority of Star Web netizens. Upon seeing Lu Jie's post, many people subconsciously thought that it was a rumor. This included Black's official fan group owner, Lu Lang. However, when these skeptical people clicked on Lu Jie's Star Web account, they could not help but gasp. They immediately shut their mouths. Star Web's official authentication could not be fake, so this news was definitely not a rumor. They did not expect that Black and Lin Yuan actually knew each other and were friends. Otherwise, they would not have had the opportunity to eat together. Lu Jie's post made the top factions and veteran factions' younger generation, who wanted to curry favor with Lin Yuan and attack Black, immediately feel that they seemed to have outsmarted themselves. They hurriedly deleted all their posts related to Black and Lin Yuan. In an instant, these veteran factions and top factions' younger generation's posts targeting Black were completely deleted. This storm also came to an end with Lu Jie's post. Tian Ningning, who had been observing the Star Web's movements, could not help but cry with excitement when she saw Lu Jie's post and the calm Star Web. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, "It's finally over. It's finally over." However, Tian Ningning felt that as Black's exclusive reporter, it was time for her to have a good talk with Black. Just now, Lin Yuan had also received private messages from the Braised Egghead, Zhou Jiasin, the Violent-Tempered Woman, and the others. Although Lin Yuan's original Star Web account did not block everyone's messages like the combat class Spirit Chi professional Black's identity, he did not have many friends. However, Lin Yuan did not have many friends on this Star Web account. He did not even add most of the members of the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club as Star Web friends. Therefore, whenever he saw someone send him a Star Web message, Lin Yuan would immediately check it. At one glance, Lin Yuan's face was as wonderful as if he had opened a big dying house. Lin Yuan could not imagine how many people had scolded him on Star Web tonight and how many had been scolded for nothing. Just as Lin Yuan was thinking about how to solve this matter, he found Lu Jie's post. After seeing Lu Jie's post, Lin Yuan knew that this matter had calmed down. He did not need to solve it at all. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of Black's Star Web exclusive reporter, Tianning. Lin Yuan hurriedly exited his original Star Web account and logged into Black's Star Web account, which had not been online for some time. After logging into Black's Star Web account, Lin Yuan saw that Tianning had sent him 99+ messages. Upon seeing these messages, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that he really did not treat his exclusive reporter well enough. However, Lin Yuan, who had been busy and rarely had time to rest, really could not take care of Tianning on Star Web. Lin Yuan was very satisfied with Tianning during this period when she was his exclusive reporter. Lin Yuan felt that it was time for him to find her and have a good and honest talk. Chapter 3. Tomorrow, we will start developing the swamp world. Everyone can join the book group and chat together. End of this chapter. Chapter 949. However, Lin Yuan still blamed himself for making Tianning so worried. His words were filled with a sobbing tone. Therefore, Lin Yuan first sent a message to Tianning. Black, I'm sorry. Then, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and sent. Black, I've set up a guild club. I wonder if you're interested in being my exclusive reporter and my guild club's team reporter. Black, if possible, I hope we can talk about this face-to-face in person. Lin Yuan had sent such a message after careful consideration. Tianning was his exclusive reporter and had been wholeheartedly helping him solve all kinds of matters on Star Web. However, he had always neglected Tianning because he had been busy. Therefore, if he wanted to get closer to Tianning and be able to keep in touch at all times, the relationship had to be transferred from Star Web to reality. Only then could he take care of Tianning while he was busy. At least, Tianning could be his exclusive reporter and find him at any time. It would not be like now when he encountered something. After transferring the Star Web relationship to reality, even if he was busy and Tianning still could not contact him, she could immediately contact the others in the return from faraway manner. Or she could discuss with the others how to deal with matters like tonight. In another half a month, this year's S tournament would come to an end. As soon as this year's S tournament ended, the qualifiers for the next year's S tournament would begin. Lin Yuan was originally going to join the Dome Guild Club as Black and become a main member of the guild. As his Star Web exclusive reporter, Tianning should already know the news. Most of the more famous members on Star Web had exclusive reporters, and it was the same for the guild club. Lin Yuan had already seen Tianning's quality and ability. If Tianning wanted to be his exclusive reporter, she could also become the Dome Guild Club's team reporter. That would save Lin Yuan the effort of finding a team reporter for the Dome Guild Club. The team reporter needed to be responsible for the entire guild club's external reports and public opinion control. It had a very important role in a guild club. A good team reporter could allow the entire team to have no worries on Star Web. They just needed to constantly improve their strength and strive for the best results in the All-Star tournament. If Tianning was too busy after becoming the Dome Club's team reporter, she could also ask Lu Jie's exclusive reporter if she was willing to become the Dome Club's team reporter as well. If Tianning and Lu Jie's exclusive reporter were willing to cooperate, they would definitely be able to take care of all aspects of the Dome Gaming Club in an orderly manner. After all, the Dome Guild Club was a newly established guild, and the reserve members, Zhang Xiaobai and the others, were former reserve members of the Extreme Guild Club. At that time, it was inevitable that people would say something on Star Web. Rather than waiting for someone to say something on Star Web, he felt it was better to prepare in advance. If Tianning agreed to be the Dome Guild Club's team reporter, he could let Tianning leak news about the Dome Guild Club on Star Web before the start of the new S tournament. While Lin Yuan was pondering, Tian Ningning had mixed feelings when she saw Black's message. Tian Ningning was a little angry. No matter what, Black had thrown her, a star web reporter, there. He didn't even contact him when there was a problem. Moreover, even after he contacted Black, Black still did not respond. However, the words "I'm sorry" directly hit Tian Ningning's heart. The words "I'm sorry" proved that Black did not deliberately ignore her. Otherwise, there was no need for him to say the words "I'm sorry" to her. To put it bluntly, a Star Web exclusive reporter was equivalent to a personal secretary who helped the contract party manage Star Web's public opinion and release Star Web news. Black did not need to express his apology to her. Since Black had expressed his apology to her, it meant that he had placed her emotions in his heart. Upon hearing that Black had established a guild club, Tian Ningning's eyes could not help but light up. As Black's exclusive reporter, Tian Ningning was already thinking about how to spread this news on Star Web in the best way. When Tian Ningning saw that Black had invited her to be the guild club's team reporter again, she immediately felt Black's deep trust in her. However, Tian Ningning immediately felt a little pressure. It was already so difficult to be a Star Web reporter for Black alone. She did not know how hard it would be to take care of Black's entire guild club. However, when this hard job was placed in front of Tian Ningning, she could not say anything to refuse. Especially when Tian Ningning saw that Black wanted to talk to her face to face, she could not help but yell excitedly. All the emotions in Tian Ningning's heart were replaced by excitement, nervousness, anticipation, and a trace of shyness. Although Tian Ningning was Black's Star Web exclusive reporter, Black was also her idol. "I'm going to meet Black." Tian Ningning suddenly realized that she might be able to see Black's appearance behind the mask. She did not know what this young hero in radiance looked like. Now that they were meeting, Tian Ningning also had a lot of things to say to Black, especially about Black's frequent disappearance. Thus, Tian Ningning replied, "Tian Ningning, I also want to talk to you face to face. I don't know when you have time to look for you." When Lin Yuan saw Tian Ningning's message, he immediately replied, "Black, come to my house. Address, Radiance Federation's royal capital's Qin Lake, return from faraway manor." Since Lin Yuan had invited Tian Ningning to meet offline and wanted her to be the Dome Club's team reporter, Lin Yuan did not intend to continue hiding his identity with her. Only by revealing his identity to Tian Ningning would he be able to have the best cooperation with her. The Dome Club was inside the return from faraway manor, and it was unrealistic for Lin Yuan to let Tian Ningning be the Dome Club's team reporter without telling her the truth. As they were about to enter the new season of the S tournament, Lin Yuan planned to invite Gao Feng to join his guild club's main team. At that time, Gao Feng and Lu Jie, who were the Dome Club's main members, would have to meet Tian Ningning. Gao Feng was now His Holiness Cicada Cry's disciple, and he was no longer just a direct descendant of the Gao family, a top faction. When Tian Ningning saw Black's message, she blinked her eyes twice. She felt that Black's message was like an old scumbag trying to woo a young lady, directly announcing his identity and asking the young lady to look for him. At that thought, Tian Ningning hurriedly shook her head twice and threw her old thoughts out of the window. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 950. Tian Ningning, I'm in the royal capital. I'll handle the work at hand for the next few days and visit your home within a week. Tian Ningning, the Star Web storm is over, and I didn't do much. Tian Ningning, but I want to know how you offended Lin Yuan, what is his identity, and how did you get attacked by so many faction disciples? Tian Ningning said this with a very serious expression. As Black's exclusive reporter, she had to know about this. Tian Ningning couldn't guarantee that something similar would not happen again. If something similar happened again, she had to understand the situation in advance to be able to face and deal with it effectively. Otherwise, if something like this happened again, Tian Ningning would still be blinded and wouldn't know what to do. Upon hearing Tian Ningning's words, Lin Yuan thought for a moment and felt that it was a little troublesome to explain such things to her on Star Web. The best solution was to say it face to face. Thus, Lin Yuan replied, Black, you'll know when you come. Black, I have a lot of things to do recently, so I don't plan to log into my Star Web account. If there's anything, you can call me directly. After saying that, Lin Yuan sent his phone number to Tianningning. After sending the message to Tianningning, Lin Yuan immediately clicked on Chimy's live streaming room. It had to be said that this was Lin Yuan's first time watching a live streaming on Star Web and Chimy's live streaming room. Looking at the crazy gifts, bullet comments, and number of viewers in the live streaming room, Lin Yuan swallowed his saliva. Knowing how beautiful Chimy's singing was, Lin Yuan had long foreseen that Chimy would definitely become popular on Star Web. However, he didn't expect Chimy to be so popular now. Looking at the gifts in Chimy's live streaming room, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that the amount in the surprise box that Chimy had given him was probably more than his purchase with no loss store's income. Although the majority of the gifts in Chimy's live streaming room came from the top 10 fans, the majority of Chimy's income did not just come from these 10 viewers. The real majority of Chimy's income was the tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of live streaming viewers. Even if each of them gifted $1 Radiance, it would add up to hundreds of millions of Radiance dollars. Lin Yuan looked at Chimy's fan ranking and found that nearly 200 million users had rewarded Chimy. Although many of the viewers at the bottom of the fan rankings were tipped in Federation dollars, there were also quite a number of viewers who tipped in Radiance dollars. Lin Yuan estimated that Chimy's income of billions of Radiance dollars from live streaming was definitely unstoppable. Maybe even more. At that moment, he suddenly regretted saying that he would let Chimy freely decide how to use the Radiance dollars earned in the live streaming room. Chimy was still singing in the live streaming room. Delicate, seductive in the mud. Decadent in the 3rd month of the season. The most tender new leaves didn't even bother withering. There was no need to part forever. Between the smooth pebbles, there was a reborn fire seed. Time is only an inch, it extends the withered glory. Under the dripping grass eaves, who bumps into the old lantern by the window? Polished, a hasty reunion. At the end of the green duckweed, the wind and dew danced even more. I thought that this moment coincided with karma. As Chimy sang, it calculated the divine movement Bodhi fruit's time. Chimy had finally turned into a human form for a live streaming, and it didn't want to suddenly turn into a bird during the live streaming. When singing this song, Chimy opened up its dusty memories. Back then, it was covered in dirty feathers, lying in a small box, trembling with hunger, and it didn't even have the strength to chirp. The sound birds in the box with it all had usnea leaves to eat, but whenever it wanted to peck at the usnea leaves, it would always be ruthlessly pushed away. Then, it heard the person who sold it curse. Sound birds that failed to evolve into songstress birds shouldn't waste usnea leaves. Day after day, Chimy became weaker. Originally, every time someone opened the box, Chimy would try its best to raise its head and flap its wings, trying its best to show itself so that it could be sold. Chimy didn't know how to sing and had failed to evolve into a songstress bird. Even if it couldn't eat the usnea leaves, it didn't want to be a useless chicken. However, the sound birds around it changed batches after batches, and it was the only one left. Every time it raised its head and flapped its wings, it would either receive disdainful gazes or be ignored. Slowly, Chimy got used to curling its body tightly in the corner of the box, covering its head with feathers like an ostrich. Back then, Chimy felt that it might really be trash that no one wanted. Until one day, a pair of hands that still appeared cold even in Redbud City's hot and stuffy environment carried it out of the box. Chimy secretly opened its wings and carefully extended its head out of the wings. It saw a thin and weak youth smiling brightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. The youth's smile was like the light after the rain in Redbud City, illuminating Chimy's heart. At the same time, Chimy also noticed that the youth was carrying a dirty gray kitten. After returning home, the youth used water to bathe himself and the gray kitten. During the bath, the youth would ask if it was cold from time to time. Then, every time he tested the water temperature, he would carefully add a little hot water to the basin. When adding hot water, the youth would extend his palm to block in front of it and the gray kitten, afraid that the hot flow would burn them. This was the first smear of gentleness that Chimy had ever experienced. Afterward, Chimy had a name, 8 usnea vines that were more delicious than usnea leaves, and obtained the first praise in its life. For half a year, it learned its first song under the youth's patient guidance. When it was with Lin Yuan, Chimey felt that it was the luckiest life form in the world. It was a life form that had been crushed into the soil since birth, but it finally had the chance to perch on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch. Originally, when Lin Yuan allowed Chimey to freely decide how to earn money from the live streaming room, Chimey didn't know how to spend the money. But now, Chimey had made a decision. While looking at the frenzied comments in the live streaming room, Chimey said softly, "Everyone be quiet. Everyone, please be quiet. I have something to say." Chimey felt that its words were filled with a magical power. After it said that, the live streaming room fell silent. At that moment, Chimey saw Genius scuttling onto its shoulder and whispering into its ear, "Genius, Chimey, has already muted everyone. Chimey, Genius has already muted everyone. Chimey, if you have something to say, just say it." After hearing Genius' words, Chimey immediately had an embarrassed expression and let out an awkward cough. Immediately after, it spoke while everyone was muted. The second was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 951. I've been a star web live streamer for at most 8 months. I haven't live streamed much during this period. I've only live streamed once or twice a week, and I've been off for a few months. However, I've already earned a lot of Radiance dollars just from live streaming on Star Web. Although Chimey's Star Web live streaming room could no longer send bullet comments, its words still stunned everyone watching the live streaming. They did not understand why the sparrow voice lowly goddess was lamenting on Star Web for no reason. There was an old saying that the more one lamented, the more mistakes one made. One would only be good if they did not say it, especially for Star Web live streaming, which relied on people to reward them. If one had a special understanding of the sparrow voice lowly goddess words, it seemed that there was a hint of flaunting her wealth. Tonight, the sparrow voice lowly goddess had revealed her face and live streamed made her the #1 beauty in Star Web. Would the sparrow voice lowly goddess, who had just become the #1 beauty, suddenly self-destruct and be hated by people the next day? However, as the live streaming room was set for everyone to carry on, the audience could not send bullet comments to vent their emotions. At that moment, everyone heard the sparrow voice lowly goddess continue to speak. "I have never touched the Radiance dollars that I earned from live streaming. I've saved them all. After careful calculation, there are about 3 billion Radiance dollars. After saying that, Chimey seemed to be happy about its achievement and smiled brightly. However, it did not know that its words were equivalent to publicly flaunting its wealth in the live streaming room. Although the Star Web live streaming room could block all bullet comments, the live streaming content of a big live streaming host like the sparrow voice lowly goddess would be recorded and saved in the Star Web video library. At that moment, even some of the old fans of the sparrow voice lowly goddess in the live streaming room were dumbfounded by the sparrow voice lowly goddess's actions. If she was publicly flaunting her wealth and was confirmed, even if the sparrow voice lowly goddess had the strength, she would not be able to penetrate the Earth's core. If she lost her popularity in the future, it would be difficult for her to become popular. Just as everyone was wondering why the sparrow voice lowly goddess would self-destruct in the live streaming room, the elated sparrow voice lowly goddess smiled sweetly. "I won't be able to finish spending these 3 billion Radiance dollars no matter what, and I don't plan to spend them. I plan to use this 3 billion Radiance dollars to set up a Warm Sun Fund. This Warm Sun Foundation is invested in every corner of the Radiance Federation to provide a suitable normal Fae for anyone who has the qualifications to become a Spirit Chi professional but doesn't have the ability to purchase a Fae. At the same time, the Warm Sun Foundation will also allocate 1/3 of the funds to save those Faes with innate defects and restore them to a healthy state. Let these Faes with innate defects have a chance to change their lives like Spirit Chi professionals. Alright, I'm done." After saying that, Chimey decisively hung up the live broadcast. At that moment, Chimey's live broadcast had only been going on for slightly more than an hour. Originally, Chimey could maintain its human form for nearly 4 hours using the divine form Bodhi fruit. It could be said that Chimey had gone offline too early. However, at that moment, Chimey threw a tantrum when it thought of Lin Yuan. It was unwilling to sing for the audience that had said bad things about Lin Yuan and Black. Chimey lowered its head and said softly to Genius. Smart, I'll leave the Nuanyang fund to you. I'll be in charge of earning money, and you'll be in charge of spending the money. Genius swayed its 5 fluffy tails and said in a childish voice, Chimey, there won't be any problem with the allocation of funds on StarWeb. Chimey, there won't be any problem with the allocation of funds that I helped you transfer on StarWeb. I will do my best to plan according to the detailed situation of the major cities on StarWeb. However, I will still need Lin Yuan's help for such things. We only have a plan. Without manpower, we won't be able to push this matter to every corner of the Radiance Federation. When Chimey heard Genius' words, it felt that this matter was very complicated. Chimey shook its head and decided not to think so much. Since Genius and Lin Yuan were around, there was no need for it to worry. At the same time, Chimey recalled Lin Yuan's warm sun-like smile when it first saw him. It was that smile that had illuminated Chimey's life. Chimey wanted to pass on this warm sun-like smile to every corner of the Radiance Federation. At the very least, it wanted to give those spirit chi professionals like Lin Yuan and phase like Genius and Genius a chance to change. Chimey, which had been dormant in the dust for a long time, finally rose to the top, understood. Any opportunity in the dust could bring a warm sun-like power to the life forms in desperate situations. After Chimey turned off the live broadcast, the ban on everyone in the live streaming room was automatically lifted. At that moment, Chimey was hugging Genius and enjoying the last time it had with Genius. However, it didn't know how shocked the viewers in its live streaming room were. Blue wind and rain, heavens! The sparrow voice lowly goddess actually threw out over 3 billion radiance dollars that she earned from live streaming for charity. I want to ask which live streamer on StarWeb can do this? Chen Yu Huang, the sparrow voice lowly goddess, is actually helping those who can't afford phase but have the aptitude. I might be able to afford phase, but I still have to thank the sparrow voice lowly goddess for those who can't afford phase. Follow heart. Am I the only one who noticed the main point? The sparrow voice lowly goddess is not only helping those with the aptitude of spirit chi professionals, but she is also helping those phase with innate defects. The sparrow voice lowly goddess is simply too warm and caring. Forget me, I don't have so much to say. I just want to say that the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. After this bullet screen was sent out, many people saw this bullet screen. They couldn't help but learn from Forget Me and posted in the bullet comment. Beating beans, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. All the way to the end, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. Soft rabbit baby, the sparrow voice lowly goddess is the true warm sun. The bullet comments formed a string of irresistible steel torrents that lingered in the sparrow voice lowly goddess live streaming room for a long time and refused to disperse. Looking at the bullet comments that blocked his vision, Lin Yuan couldn't help but give Chimey a thumbs up. Chimey had done something that Lin Yuan had always wanted to do but hadn't had the time to do. Lin Yuan felt that the little fellow that only knew how to chirp on his ear had grown up. As Chimey's contractor, Lin Yuan still needed to help implement and complete the Warm Sun Fund. Lin Yuan now had a huge network of connections and was no longer the immature youth. It was no longer difficult for Lin Yuan to implement the Warm Sun Fund. At that moment, Bai Hao was staring at the bullet comments in the live streaming room. He looked calm, but his heart was already blooming with emotions. When Bai Hao had first entered the live streaming room, he had fallen in love at first sight with the sparrow voice lowly goddess like a rainbow. Now, Bai Hao only had a bone-deep love for the sparrow voice lowly goddess. She had a voice, looks, and talent that he liked. At the same time, she had a kindness that moved him. As long as he met such a person, Bai Hao felt that he wouldn't be a man if he didn't grab hold of her. However, Bai Hao had no idea how to grab hold of this feeling at the moment. However, Bai Hao felt that he should have a brave plan to pursue his love. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already logged out of StarWeb. After taking a shower, he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He planned to take advantage of the night to explore the swamp world, which he had never set foot in, through Klein Hub. Chapter 952. After seeing the swamp dimensional rift, Lin Yuan was looking forward to the swamp world. Apart from the main world's Aga Pattern Federation and the Divine Wood Federation, the only other world that Lin Yuan could go to was the swamp world. The Divine Wood Federation and the Radiance Federation were both federations that existed in the main world, but they were very different. The three major federations on the Aga Pattern Federation had a large population, and there were constant conflicts and intrigues between them. In the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan could operate and find ways to profit from the three major federations. However, if he endlessly mined the resources on the Aga Pattern Federation, it would be tantamount to touching the common interests of the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. He would immediately be counterattacked by the joint forces of the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. However, the swamp world was completely different. It was a vast world where only the swamp dimensional life forms lived. Lin Yuan could carry out uncontrolled mining and establish his base camp in a dimensional world like the swamp world. The most important thing to develop a dimensional world was to have strength. In terms of strength, Lin Yuan held the creation seed's power. Even if he did not dominate the swamp world, he would still be able to do so. Even if he did not dominate the swamp world, it would not be a problem for him to have a huge territory as a foothold. As soon as he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately thought of the Class 4 Medusa lizard locked in the leaf-shaped diamond Fey storage box. Lin Yuan hurriedly exited the Spirit Lock spatial zone and left the main residence. Looking at the very elegant courtyard arranged by Hu Quan, Lin Yuan contacted Blackie, who had been tormenting the angelfish of bliss in the hidden WRM lake, in his spiritual spatial zone. Blackie immediately rose from the hidden WRM lake and came in front of Lin Yuan. With a flip, he landed on Blackie's back and let it fly him toward the back of the mountain. After finding a place with no one, Lin Yuan jumped off Blackie's back and summoned the Medusa lizard locked in the leaf-shaped diamond Fey storage box. The Medusa lizard was locked in an iron cage made of platinum spiritual materials and had been struggling ever since it was locked in the cage. However, since the Class 4 Medusa lizard's strength was far from the iron cage's endurance limit, the shape of the iron cage did not change at all. On the other hand, the Medusa lizard was exhausted. It was lying in the cage and sticking out its tongue. Upon seeing Lin Yuan, the Medusa giant lizard immediately roared and pounced at him with its hind legs. However, due to the iron cage's obstruction, the Medusa giant lizard was unable to pounce on him. Instead, he had bumped into himself. Lin Yuan looked at the Medusa and realized that many faint red patterns had appeared on its originally purple scales. When he saw these red patterns, he knew that the Class 4 Medusa giant lizard had devoured those 4 Class 4 swamp crocodiles, and its grade had increased. When the Medusa monitor's body was covered with hideous red veins, the Medusa monitor would be able to expand in size and successfully advance to level 5. Lin Yuan was rather satisfied as he looked at the Medusa giant lizard, which was constantly roaring at him and deliberately attacking him even in the cage. The more ferocious and aggressive the Medusa lizard was, the more effective it would be when nurtured. Lin Yuan waved his hand, and the amber button-shaped source sand that was hanging on his sleeve landed on the ground. Then, a huge quicksand vortex appeared under the iron cage that contained the Medusa giant lizard, and 12 chain swords shot out of it. Each chain of 3 formed a group and firmly wrapped around the Medusa giant lizard's limbs. This caused the Medusa giant lizard to maintain a posture in the iron cage and find it difficult to move. The source sand was now only Gold Eye/Fantasy 2. Even if it used the ferromanganese chain swords to control the Medusa giant lizard, it would not be enough. It would not be enough to completely control the Medusa giant lizard. Thanks to the Medusa giant lizard, it was already exhausted after struggling for several hours. Otherwise, if the Medusa giant lizard exerted a little force, it would break the ferromanganese chain swords. Lin Yuan took out a Medusa's eyeball in front of the Medusa giant lizard and crushed it before cutting his palm. He let the liquid in the Medusa's eyeball fuse with the blood in his palm. Lin Yuan realized that after his blood fused with the liquid in the Medusa's eyeball, it immediately turned into a blood-colored crystal. This blood-colored crystal was hard to the touch, no different from a stone. This must be related to the petrification ability in the Medusa's eyeball. At the same time, because the blood in the crystal was in a petrified state, it could preserve Lin Yuan's scent to the greatest extent. Then, Lin Yuan took out the Medusa demon's greenish-purple heart's blood and threw the blood-colored crystal into it. He felt the Medusa demon's heart's blood continuously corroding the crystal bottle in his hand. He threw the crystal bottle into the quicksand under his feet and let the sand wrap around the crystal bottle. Finally, a huge palm formed by sand emerged from the ground and struck the Medusa giant lizard's lower jaw. The Medusa giant lizard's lower jaw was attacked, and it opened its mouth in anger. At that moment, the palm formed by sand immediately threw the crystal bottle into the Medusa giant lizard's mouth. Then, a large amount of sand was split out from the palm and poured into the Medusa giant lizard's mouth. He had to ensure that the crystal bottle covered in sand could reach the Medusa lizard's stomach. He had done this because the Medusa monitor lizard's saliva contained toxins and would cause a severe bacterial infection after being bitten. On the other hand, it was because the giant Medusa lizard's mouth was too smelly. Even though he was now 5 meters away from the Medusa giant lizard, every time it roared, the Medusa giant lizard wouldn't be able to dodge. Lin Yuan could smell an unbearable aura. Lin Yuan was really afraid that if he walked within 1 meter of the Medusa monitor lizard, he would stumble due to the unpleasant smell. As for how the Medusa monitor lizard would feel after devouring a large amount of sand and crystal bottles, he did not need to consider it. With the Medusa lizard's powerful digestive ability, not to mention swallowing sand grains. Even if the ferromanganese was swallowed, the ferromanganese would be decomposed after being soaked in the stomach acid for a long time. The Medusa monitor lizard was caught off guard and became angrier after being forced to swallow a mouthful of sand. However, the Medusa monitor lizard soon calmed down. It had an intoxicated and immersed expression on its face as though it was savoring the taste in its stomach that it had to follow and obey. At that moment, the ferocity on the Medusa monitor lizard's face disappeared, and it was as obedient as a pug. However, in just a short while, the intoxicated and immersed expression on the Medusa monitor lizard's face disappeared, and it subconsciously roared. When the roaring Medusa monitor lizard smelled the bloody smell coming from Lin Yuan's palm wound, it hurriedly stopped roaring and lowered its raised head. The Medusa lizard quickly stopped crying and lowered its raised head. The first time was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 953. Even though the Medusa giant lizard did not show any intimacy toward Lin Yuan, it would not take the initiative to attack him now. Upon seeing this scene, Lin Yuan forcefully held his breath and walked to the front of the cage before repeating the previous steps. This time, when Lin Yuan tossed the crystal bottle up, the Medusa giant lizard raised its head and swallowed it. After the second induction, he realized that the Medusa giant lizard would subconsciously approach him. Her expression was filled with flattery and admiration, as if she had become a Medusa demon with a head full of snake hair in the eyes of the giant Medusa lizard. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan opened the cage and let the Medusa giant lizard climb out. At the same time, he secretly used Spirit Essence Burst, and a thick layer of Spirit Chi covered his fist. As the Spirit Chi concentration in the Spirit Lock spatial zone increased, Lin Yuan's Spirit Essence Burst attack became stronger. If the Medusa monitor lizard had the intention to hurt him, he would definitely punch it without mercy. However, Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa giant lizard, which had been lured twice, had already displayed the true colors of a professional bootlicker. He didn't dare to approach her abruptly and only dared to silently guard her from the side. He planned to induce the Medusa monitor lizard a third time to reach a permanent contract. At that moment, Morbius' voice echoed in the depths of his soul. Lin Yuan, dimensional life forms live in dimensional worlds. Spirit Chi is useless against them. However, source-type power is an extremely precious treasure to dimensional creatures. The effect of source-type power on dimensional life forms is far greater than pure Spirit Chi on phase. If source power is added during the third induction, it might allow the Medusa lizard to undergo an earth-shattering evolution. Dimensional creatures are also grateful for great opportunities. When the time comes, the Medusa lizard will be even more loyal after forming a permanent contract. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. Then, Lin Yuan called out the princess, who had been digesting the law origin crystal without stopping for a moment. He asked the princess, "Princess, when you digest the law origin crystals, you can refine law origin crystals that contain pure energy. At the same time, you will also store the source energy in your body. Use this source energy to inject it into the complete rules and let the rules improve. I wonder if you can take this source energy out of your body?" As a sacred source life form, the princess was highly intelligent. When she saw the Medusa lizard in front of Lin Yuan like a pug, she knew what Lin Yuan was planning. However, she did not understand. What was the use of using such precious source-type power to enhance these lowly dimensional life forms? Each of the 28 crows hit by the jackdaw wither in the holy sword state could easily kill dozens of Medusa lizards of such strength. Thus, the princess sent a question to Lin Yuan in her soul. Lin Yuan sensed the princess' doubts and said, "Next, I plan on developing the swamp world, and nurturing a few swamp dimensional creatures that can carry out absolute control will help with the development of the swamp world." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's answer, the princess' eyes lit up. If he could develop in the swamp world, he would always have law origin crystals to eat even if he did not trade with others in the future. This was simply too good. After sensing the Medusa giant lizard situation, the princess said to Lin Yuan, "Don't worry. Master, dimensional creatures can only undergo a baptism of source-type powers once in their lives. They will awaken and evolve under the baptism of source-type powers. Dimensional creatures of any level can receive the baptism of source-type powers. There are no restrictions. However, the higher the level of dimensional creatures, the more source-type powers they need to undergo a perfect source baptism. Since this Medusa monitor is at level 4, it needs 400 units of source power to undergo a perfect baptism of source power." Lin Yuan frowned. 400 portions of source energy? Didn't that mean that the Medusa monitor lizard would need 400 source crystals to undergo a perfect source baptism? Such consumption was an astronomical figure for Lin Yuan before he had the golden lotus brocade seedling. Even if he had the golden lotus brocade truss, he would still feel the pinch if he spent 400 portions of source-type power. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, the princess reached out her hand to press down the erect ahog on her head. He said reluctantly, "Master, that's right. Of course, you can also perform an imperfect source baptism. This way, you can save a lot of source power. The Medusa lizard will also evolve." Lin Yuan asked after hearing the princess's words, "How much source power does an imperfect source baptism require?" The princess replied immediately, "For an imperfect source-type baptism, the owner can choose how much source-type power to use. It can be any value between 1 to 400 source-type power. However, a source-type life form can only undergo one source-type baptism in its lifetime. After undergoing an imperfect source-type baptism, it cannot undergo a perfect source-type baptism again." Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment. In the end, he decided to give the Medusa lizard a perfect source baptism. The 400 portions of source energy were spent, and it was just an experiment. He wanted to experiment how much a perfect source baptism would improve dimensional creatures. If this perfect source baptism did not meet his expectations, he would not use it on dimensional life forms in the future. Princess, perform a perfect source baptism on the giant Medusa lizard. I can also take a look at the improvement a perfect source baptism has on dimensional creatures. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the princess responded, "Hey, master. I'll inject 400 portions of source power into the giant Medusa lizard's body." While speaking, the princess danced gently, and a handful of silk threads spread out from her skirt. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan threw the last portion of the concocted liquid into the giant Medusa lizard's mouth. After the giant Medusa lizard swallowed the last portion of the spirit liquid, the silk threads in the princess' skirt turned into sharp blades that stabbed into the giant Medusa lizard's body. At the same time, a turbid amber halo appeared on every silk thread and finally injected into the giant Medusa lizard's body through the princess' skirt. When the princess stabbed these silk threads into the giant Medusa lizard's body, Lin Yuan found that there were exactly 400 silk threads. Each silk thread was injecting a portion of source power into different parts of the giant Medusa lizard's body. After the princess pulled the silk threads out of the giant Medusa lizard's body, Lin Yuan immediately heard the giant Medusa lizard let out a loud roar. At that moment, the giant Medusa lizard's roar was quite different from its original roar. The second one was even louder. End of this chapter. Chapter 954. If the Medusa lizard's roar had carried a sense of ferocity and oppression, then the Medusa lizard's roar now carried a kind of majesty and tyranny. The Medusa lizard's roar now carried a kind of majesty and tyranny. Immediately after, the Medusa lizard's nearly 6-meter-long body suddenly swelled up. The fishy smell in the Medusa lizard's mouth became even stronger, causing Lin Yuan to hurriedly take a few steps back. Lin Yuan realized that as the Medusa lizard's body expanded, its tail, which originally took up half of its body length, was rapidly lengthening. Now, the length of its tail could already reach more than twice its body length. At the same time, 3 heads suddenly grew on the Medusa lizard's shoulders while it was roaring. These 3 heads grew rapidly and soon reached the same length and size as the Medusa lizard's original head. The 4 heads let out a loud roar, blowing up the sand particles formed by the source sand's shattered soil layer. The Medusa lizard's original bluish-purple scales had also turned into a mysterious and noble purple-black color. The purple-black scales were covered with black-gold patterns. These black-gold patterns wandered wantonly on the purple-black scales with an indescribable sense of blood. The Medusa lizard's limbs had become thicker in order to bear this huge body that was nearly 16 meters long, including the tail. At the same time, each finger on the lizard's claws could reach a meter long. The dark golden claws were sharp and dull, and the large sand particles between the claws were crushed into powder. An amber pattern appeared on the front body that held up the 4 heads. This pattern looked exactly like the Medusa lizard's current appearance. Lin Yuan did not find it strange at all about the Medusa lizard's changes and sudden increase in size. If there were no major changes after the perfect source baptism of 400 units of source power, then he would have suffered a huge loss. However, Lin Yuan had seen many dimensional life forms, but he had never seen any dimensional life form with such a totem. Furthermore, the color of this totem looked very similar to the amber color of the source power, and even the aura was exactly the same. Lin Yuan had asked Morbius, Genius, and Princess about this, but he did not get an answer from the 3 of them. The answer could only be found in the exploration of the swamp world. Looking at the Medusa lizard that had undergone the perfect source baptism, Lin Yuan realized that the Class 4 Medusa lizard should be more powerful than a Class 5 demon. Moreover, the 4-headed Medusa lizard had greater flexibility and could probably fight 4 Class 5 demons at the same time without being at a disadvantage. Demons were the most powerful existences among dimensional life forms of the same class. From the looks of it, the comprehensive strength of the Medusa lizard that had undergone the baptism of the source power should be equivalent to that of a level 6 Medusa lizard. But now that the Medusa lizard had been baptized by the perfect source power, no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like a Medusa lizard anymore. It was as if the Medusa monitor lizard had evolved into a source-type life form with the highest life level under the source-type baptism. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa giant lizard's eyes were shining with wisdom, and its roar had changed again. There were strange syllables in the roar, as if it was speaking a unique language. Translator of Lu editor Lin of lizard of and it lizard of lizard of lizard of. Thus, Lin Yuan was unable to sense the Medusa lizard's thoughts. All of a sudden, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. He recalled that Genius had mentioned that there was a new and unique subject on Star Web called dimensional linguistics. For example, the special syllables produced by some high-grade demons could express special meanings. Another example was the Medusa snake demon's chanting. It could also send out special commands to control the Medusa lizard that was loyal to it. Genius was very interested in this subject and had been sorting out the syllables of the various dimensional lifeforms' cries on Star Web. It was trying to guess the specific meaning of the syllables. The Medusa lizard's cries were filled with a large number of obscure and complex syllables. Genius could completely connect with the Medusa lizard through the interconnection tail. It could sense the Medusa lizard's thoughts and understand the meaning of different syllables. It would let Genius master the language of the Medusa lizard or the swamp-dimensional life form as soon as possible after the perfect baptism. The Medusa giant lizard had already walked in front of Lin Yuan and lay down obediently. The Medusa lizard originally wanted to turn its head and use its big head to nudge Lin Yuan, but it keenly sensed Lin Yuan's disdain for the smell in its mouth. The Medusa lizard hurriedly buried its 4 big heads in the quicksand under its feet. Soon, the Medusa lizard lifted its head in the quicksand again, and Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa lizard no longer had any unpleasant smell. The smell in the Medusa lizard's mouth should be related to the bacteria and toxins in its salivary glands. The Medusa lizard could now freely control the glands in its mouth to produce toxins. Upon seeing the Medusa lizard's big head wanting to come over but not daring to, Lin Yuan took the initiative to rub its head. Lin Yuan realized that the Medusa lizard's purplish-black skin was very resilient and abnormally hard and thick. Lin Yuan could imagine what kind of defense this purplish-black skin had. The Medusa lizard's head was touched by Lin Yuan, and the other 3 heads did not show any dissatisfaction because Lin Yuan only touched one of them. This meant that the Medusa lizard's 4 heads were controlled by a unified soul, unlike Duan He's contracted purple demon, which had a separate soul in each head. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to let Genius use the connection tail to learn the Medusa lizard's language. He had plenty of time to do such things later. Lin Yuan's top priority was to enter the swamp world through the Klein Hub. After entering the swamp world for the first time, the Klein Hub would not make a special mark on every location in the swamp world. Only after Lin Yuan selected a location would the Klein Hub mark the location and set it as his base camp. The next time he entered and exited through the Klein Hub, he would appear at the marked location. Therefore, the first thing Lin Yuan had to do in the swamp world was to choose a place suitable for his development and also suitable for Endless Summer's sacred source life form, the Arakoa orchid sprout. He also had to expel or remove all factors that were detrimental to his development within this location. After entering the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately let the Slaughter Sky butterfly transform into a size suitable for him to ride on. Lin Yuan rode on the Slaughter Sky butterfly's back and passed through the Klein Hub just like when he entered the Class 2 Tide Swamp Dimensional Rift. However, when Lin Yuan truly entered the swamp world, he was immediately stunned by the scene in front of him. Third, end of this chapter. Chapter 955. He saw a giant tortoise that was the size of a small mountain letting out an angry roar. The giant tortoise's back lit up with layers of earthen yellow ripples. The spikes on the tortoise's shell separated from the tortoise's back and turned into 2-story tall hills that smashed indiscriminately around the giant tortoise. With this smash, all the swamp crocodiles that were preparing to attack the giant tortoise were cleared. The swamp crocodiles that were 4 to 5 meters long were turned into meat paste. The meat paste formed by the swamp crocodiles was mixed in the pitch-black swamp, causing the swamp to turn brownish-red in color. Even so, the swamp crocodiles at the periphery of the giant tortoise still didn't take a step back. However, after the giant tortoise's attack, the swamp crocodiles at the periphery were clearly timid and didn't dare to go forward to restrain the giant tortoise. At that moment, a bewitching and sweet song echoed, and the song was filled with obscure and incomprehensible syllables. After the song echoed, the swamp crocodiles that originally had the intention to retreat no longer had any fear and hesitation. They immediately attacked the giant tortoise. To these swamp crocodiles that were 4 to 5 meters long, this giant tortoise that was close to 20 meters long was simply too huge. Even so, these swamp crocodiles were still biting onto the exposed thick skin of the giant tortoise's limbs and rolled for a while. The rolling of a swamp crocodile wouldn't cause any substantial damage to the thick skin of the giant tortoise's limbs. In fact, it would even cause the swamp crocodile's teeth to break. However, thousands of swamp crocodiles were still besieging the giant tortoise, causing its limbs to be drenched in blood. As the giant tortoise roared in pain, layers of earthen yellow light patterns appeared on the giant tortoise's shell again. Just as the giant tortoise was preparing to attack, 3 dark green energy arrows suddenly shot into the giant tortoise's mouth. The 3 dark green energy arrows consecutively shot into the same spot in the giant tortoise's mouth. The last arrow actually faintly penetrated the giant tortoise's neck. The dark green energy arrows carried powerful corrosive venom and immediately caused the small hole in the giant tortoise's neck to start to spread out. At that moment, the giant tortoise's earthen yellow wave became even stronger. The giant tortoise struggled to shake its neck, and a large amount of earthen yellow energy surged towards the wound on its neck. Under the nourishment of the earthen yellow energy, the giant tortoise's neck started to grow new flesh at a visible speed. The new flesh grew rapidly, trying to fill up the wounds caused by the corrosion of the 3 dark green arrows. This was to prevent blood from spraying out like a sprinkler due to the rupture of the blood vessels in the neck. At this moment, the strange and melodious voice suddenly became hurried. Lin Yuan looked over and saw a half-human life form with a woman's upper body, a green snake's lower body, and a head full of colorful snakes twisting its body. The strange green eyes of the half-humanoid creature suddenly turned gray. Then, the wound on the giant tortoise's neck that was about to be healed quickly petrified. The newly grown flesh sprouts broke off from the giant tortoise's body in a petrified state. The wound on the giant tortoise's neck expanded again, and this time, the flesh around the wound was petrified. It was to prevent the giant tortoise's body from growing new flesh to mend the hole. He did not expect to witness a fierce battle as soon as he entered the swamp world. The swamp rock tortoise and the Medusa demon were rare existences in the dimensional rift. In comparison, the swamp rock tortoise should be rarer than the Medusa demon. Upon seeing the situation before him, Lin Yuan could not tell if the swamp rock tortoise had designs on the Medusa demon's territory and wanted to devour the Medusa demon swamp. Moreover, the Medusa demoness was actively searching for and hunting marsh rock turtles in the swamp world. However, after careful analysis, Lin Yuan felt that the former was more likely. This was because Lin Yuan realized that this swamp rock tortoise was already class 7, and its strength was comparable to a Mythi Fey. This Medusa demon had just reached class 6. Even if it had the ability to control the swamp, it still could not actively hunt prey that was 1 grade higher than itself. This Medusa demon also had a level 6 Medusa monitor lizard nesting beside it. Half of this class 6 Medusa demon's body had caved in from the swamp rock tortoise's attack, and it obviously could not survive. Now, even exhaling was especially strenuous. Lin Yuan also keenly noticed that there was a small snake lying on the Medusa demon's head of colorful snake hair that looked completely different from the snake hair. This small snake's scales were smoother and had a jade green color. From time to time, it would climb in the snake hair, looking very timid, as though it wanted to completely hide its body in the snake hair. Lin Yuan's heart stirred. The Medusa demon was a life form that rejected life forms that did not have blood relations with them. The little snake hidden in the Medusa's hair couldn't be this Medusa's child, could it? Logically speaking, a young Medusa demon should also have a human body, a snake tail, and a head full of snake hair. With ecstatic emotions, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check on this small snake hidden in the snake hair. After a glance, Lin Yuan clenched his fist abruptly. Lin Yuan did not expect that he had actually guessed correctly. He had actually encountered an extremely rare snake Medusa. It was true that the snake Medusa was a dimensional life form, but the mutated snake Medusa could be contracted by spirit chi professionals like ordinary Fays. Moreover, the snake Medusa did not have a specific division and did not have limitations. Anyone could form a contract with the Medusa serpent. Morbius had now reached Silver X/Fantasy I and could continue to spirit lock on another Fey. Lin Yuan's current spiritual energy could also contract 1 or 2 more Fays. Therefore, Lin Yuan had designs on this snake Medusa. Lin Yuan felt that he was really too lucky to have encountered such a huge, fortuitous encounter as soon as he entered the swamp world. Medusa's snake transformation was due to an uncontrollable mutation that occurred during the evolution process. This small snake Medusa in front of him seemed to be only at the standard of a class 1-dimensional life form. The fact that the Medusa demon had transformed into a snake at this time could be considered a miracle among all the Medusas that had transformed into snakes. If this snake Medusa's grade was too high, Lin Yuan would not be able to contract it. It was not that there were no other ways to make a high-level snake Medusa submit besides a contract. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to use those methods that were not suitable for children. Even if he used methods that were not suitable for children, it would not be easy to make a highly intelligent dimensional life form submit. In particular, it was an extremely arrogant dimensional life form like the Medusa. The marsh rock tortoise in front of him was a Class 7 dimensional life form after all. It already had the law origin crystal in its body, and its strength was far from what these marsh crocodiles and Class 6 Medusa demons could compare to. The first was even stronger. End of this chapter. Chapter 956. Moreover, the swamp rock tortoise fed on mud in the swamp world. The mud devoured by the swamp rock tortoise would be stored in its stomach for nourishment. When injured, the swamp rock tortoise would decompose the nutrients in the swamp soil to recover from its injuries. Now that a large number of marsh crocodiles had died, the marsh rock tortoise's victory was practically guaranteed. Although the swamp rock tortoise usually fed on swamp soil, it had come to this Medusa's territory to feed on the swamp soil. However, as a dimensional creature, the marsh rock tortoise was also cruel by nature. Before the swamp rock tortoise swallowed the mud and left, it would definitely try to kill the Medusa mother and daughter pair. Right now, the level 6 Medusa's face was already showing obvious sorrow and pain. Highly intelligent creatures had always attached great importance to kinship and bloodline. The level 6 Medusa monster was struggling to reach her hand into her snake hair, holding her daughter who had just evolved for the first time since she was born. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Even if the Medusa could toss her daughter away, she wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed by the marsh rock tortoise no matter how far she was tossed. When the marsh rock tortoise killed the last marsh crocodile and cruelly swam toward the Medusa demon, Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to let the creation breed sky butterfly make a move. Instead, he summoned the Medusa giant lizard, which had just undergone the perfect source nature baptism and was stored in the leaf-shaped Fey storage box. After the Medusa monitor lizard was summoned, its 4 heads immediately let out 4 deafening roars. Lin Yuan said as he looked at the Medusa monitor lizard, "Go spar with that rank 7 swamp rock tortoise. Let's see how you fare against it." After the perfect source baptism, the Medusa lizard was still at rank 4. However, the Medusa lizard's strength had already reached the standard of a level 6 dimensional creature. Since he wanted to test the Medusa monitor's strength, he had to find a powerful opponent for it. No opponent was more suitable than the Class 7 swamp rock tortoise that had just experienced a fierce battle. After hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, the Medusa monitor lizard dragged its 12-meter-long body and fearlessly charged at the 20-meter-long swamp rock tortoise. When it was close to the swamp rock tortoise, the Medusa monitor rock tortoise swung its long tail and stabbed it precisely like a sharp sword at the wound on its neck. As a result, the Medusa monitor lizard's tail pierced through the swamp rock tortoise's neck. Previously, he had discovered that there was a thick layer of sharp, spiral-shaped keratin at the end of the Medusa monitor lizard's long tail, which had gone through the perfect source nature baptism. He didn't expect the spiral-shaped keratin at the end of the Medusa lizard's tail to be used like this. The long tail on the Medusa lizard's body was like a spear that could freely pierce through flesh and blood. Logically speaking, the marsh rock tortoise shouldn't have been injured so easily by the giant Medusa lizard. Tortoise's Medusa. Hard and tortoise rock tortoise and tortoise. And tortoise and. However, the moment the Medusa monitor lizard appeared, the swamp rock tortoise's eyes were focused on the totem on the Medusa monitor lizard's front body. Now that the Medusa monitor lizard's tail had pierced through the wound, the swamp rock tortoise struggled violently and prepared to counterattack. The Medusa monitor lizard's 4 heads moved, and its 4 mouths bit the swamp rock tortoise's neck from 4 directions. The Medusa monitor lizard's sharp teeth pierced through the swamp rock tortoise's hard skin. Immediately after, the Medusa monitor lizard's saliva, which contained a large amount of bacteria, was secreted again. In just a moment, a rotting smell came from the swamp rock tortoise's neck. The corrosion of bacteria and the rotting flesh made the swamp rock tortoise's neck abnormally weak. The Medusa monitor lizard's 4 heads twisted together, and the swamp rock tortoise's head and body were separated. It could be said that the swamp rock tortoise had no chance of survival. It was only waiting for this massive creature to release the last bit of energy in its body before it stopped struggling. However, the Medusa monitor lizard didn't care. Even if the swamp rock tortoise was destined to die, it still lifted its 1-meter-long forelimbs and stomped on the swamp rock tortoise's wound. It sped up the swamp rock tortoise's death. Lin Yuan couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw the Medusa monitor lizard's display of strength. The Medusa monitor lizard's combat ability made Lin Yuan feel that spending 400 portions of source-type power was definitely not in vain. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to deal with the mother and daughter pair, the Medusa monitor lizard had already run in front of him. Its 4 heads were all pointing at the Class 6 Medusa monitor lizard at the mother and daughter pair's feet. It was obvious that it wanted to devour the Class 6 Medusa monitor lizard that was on its last breath to evolve and increase its grade. Lin Yuan didn't reject it. After the Medusa lizard underwent a perfect source-type baptism, it needed to eat a large number of dimensional creatures of the same level as it and Medusa lizards of the same species if it wanted to evolve again to raise its strength. This was a good opportunity. After devouring this Class 6 Medusa, the Class 4 Medusa that had undergone a perfect source nature baptism would likely be upgraded to Class 5. Lin Yuan looked at the Medusa giant lizard, which was so hungry that it almost jumped up. Since you've signed a contract with me, I might as well give you a name. From now on, you will be called Xiting. The Medusa giant lizard now had extremely high intelligence. Upon hearing that Lin Yuan had given it a name, its 4 heads immediately roared. The roar had a silly glee to it. It was obvious that the Medusa giant lizard liked the name that Lin Yuan had given it. He had named it Lizard Ting because he wanted to know why a Medusa would grow a totem on its front body after a perfect source nature baptism. Just as Xiting was running toward the dying Class 6 Medusa giant lizard, an interesting scene happened. Logically speaking, this Level 6 Medusa monitor lizard was considered the Level 6 Medusa demon's personal guard. If Xiting wanted to devour the Level 6 Medusa monitor lizard's flesh, the Medusa demon should have attacked Xiting. However, when the Medusa giant lizard saw Xiting's 4 heads tearing the Class 6 Medusa giant lizard's flesh, it did not stop him. Instead, it stared at the amber-colored totem on Xiting's front body and knelt on the spot like a believer worshipping the god he believed in. This scene made Lin Yuan's eyes widen. He didn't expect to discover the extraordinariness of Xiting's totem as soon as he entered the swamp world. Lin Yuan heard the Medusa giant lizard raise its head with intoxicated eyes and sing a strange ballad. Chapter 958. Lin Yuan communicated his thoughts with Xiting through the interconnection tail, and Xiting immediately roared at the Medusa. The Medusa snake demon hurriedly stood up. She pulled off the Medusa snake demon that was hiding on her head and stretched her hands forward. It then stood there like a marionette, ready to be manipulated by Lin Yuan. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan nodded at Genius. Immediately after, another tail fell off from Genius' back and turned into a silver ribbon. It connected Genius to the Class 6 Medusa. The 4 black wings on Lin Yuan's back spread out and flapped as he arrived in front of the Medusa. He was about to take the trembling Medusa from the hands of the Medusa snake demon. At that moment, the snake Medusa was trembling in fear in its mother's hands. It did not understand why its mother, who had been taking care of it meticulously since birth, would pull it off from the snake hair and give it to someone else. For a moment, the snake Medusa could not help but quickly twist its body in its mother's hands as though it was saying, "Mommy, I'm so scared. I still want to hide on Mommy's head and don't leave my little tail outside." Its mother's indifference and the fact that Lin Yuan, who was flapping his 4 black wings, were getting closer and closer to it, made the little snake Medusa increasingly afraid. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan's hand was about to touch it, the little snake Medusa hurriedly curled up its body and rolled itself up. It hid its head in the middle of its body and shivered, not daring to come out. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan's hand movements became even gentler. Under normal circumstances, the Medusa would be able to become a Class 2-dimensional life form after being born for a year. This snake Medusa, which had mutated at Class 1, should have been born for less than a year and was still a child. After Lin Yuan gently took the snake Medusa with one hand, his other hand shook and took out a piece of crispy rainbow fish coat. As a humanoid life form, the Medusa's diet was similar to that of humans. However, due to the environmental restrictions in the swamp world, the Medusa only had the opportunity to eat raw food. The fragrance emitted by the crispy rainbow fish coat surged into the snake Medusa's nose. The snake Medusa's sense of smell was extremely sharp. After capturing the smell, it would magnify the smell dozens of times. Then, it flicked out its forked tongue and accurately located the scent it smelled. At this moment, the snake Medusa was spitting out her tongue from her curled body. Lin Yuan saw that the snake Medusa did not intend to poke its head out for a while, so he reached out and gently touched its soft scales. Lin Yuan's touch was very gentle. He wanted to use this gentle method to tell the snake Medusa that he was not a bad person. Under Lin Yuan's gentle caress, the snake Medusa only popped its head out after a long time. It looked at Lin Yuan timidly while staring at the crispy rainbow fish coat in Lin Yuan's hand. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled and put the fish robe to Medusa's mouth. Lin Yuan knew that Medusa could not understand what he was saying, so he did not speak. He waved the rainbow-colored fish robe in his hand, indicating that Medusa could enjoy it if she wanted to. After confirming that Lin Yuan had no ill intentions, the snake Medusa, attracted by the fragrance of the rainbow-colored fish robe, could not help but open its mouth and gently bite the crispy fish robe, making a pleasant sound. After eating, the snake Medusa's small head immediately swayed around. It was as if it had eaten a delicacy that it had never eaten before and was spoiled by the fragrance. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to contract the snake Medusa. The Class 6 Medusa had now become Shiteng's believer and was considered one of his people. It was not good for Lin Yuan to contract the snake Medusa's daughter without even saying goodbye. However, looking at the snake Medusa, Shiteng, and the Medusa demon, Lin Yuan could not help but have a headache. Lin Yuan, who was used to using true data to check phase attributes, was really not used to not being able to check the attributes of dimensional life forms in the swamp world. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan, true data binds to a world and leaves an imprint in the world. You can use true data to analyze any object in the world. After you use the Klein hub to determine the location in the swamp world, it will be equivalent to leaving an imprint in the swamp world. At that time, true data will be able to check the attributes of the swamp world dimensional life forms. Upon hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan immediately revealed a look of joy. If true data could check Shiteng's attributes, Lin Yuan was very likely to check and analyze the apostle's abilities from Shiteng's attributes. However, using the Klein hub to leave an imprint in the swamp world was not a trivial matter that could be careless. After leaving an imprint in the swamp world, the Klein hub could not be replaced again. Lin Yuan would also develop in the swamp world according to the location marked by the imprint. Therefore, the choice of this location became the most important. Lin Yuan planned to wait for Genius to learn the swamp world's language before using it to communicate with the Class 6 Medusa demon. From communicating with the Class 6 Medusa demon, he would find the most suitable location for development and construction in the nearby swamp world. Lin Yuan actually did not have high requirements for this location. It was a larger piece of land that had to be relatively enclosed. This would give him enough time to operate and develop in the swamp world. He also wanted to properly develop the swamp world, a huge treasure trove. Just as Lin Yuan and Morbius were conversing, Genius' voice echoed. Lin Yuan, Genius has roughly learned the swamp world's language. It's just that it's still a little difficult for Genius to speak these languages after learning them. It needs repeated practice. When Lin Yuan heard Genius's words, he carried Genius and said, "It's okay." Smart transform. When Genius heard Lin Yuan, it immediately meowed. After undergoing the second form of tool transformation, It became a pair of white eyes. Lin Yuan wore the white glasses on the bridge of his nose, and a lot of knowledge about the swamp world's language immediately emerged in his mind. Just as he was about to ask the Medusa, he found that the swamp world language, which had been very fluent in his mind, became clumsy in his mouth. It sounded like a stutter with a strange accent. Lin Yuan finally knew why Genius had said that it would be a little difficult to speak the swamp world's language immediately after mastering it. This was because the muscles of its mouth and vocal cords could not immediately spit out these obscure syllables in a completely unfamiliar situation. As Shiteng's believer, the Medusa could feel Shiteng's fawning and respect toward Lin Yuan. First, it was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 959. Thus, the Medusa demon respected Lin Yuan very much. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Medusa demon's brows subconsciously twitched wildly. She wondered why this Lord Apostle in front of her, who she respected so much, could not even speak clearly. Also, what kind of weird accent was in his stuttering words? Lin Yuan did not have the time to let his mouth muscles and vocal cords get used to the swamp world's pronunciation. Lin Yuan immediately took out a body-transcending memory herbs leaf from the face storage box and put it in his mouth to gently chew. Through the body-transcending memory herbs leaf, he allowed his body to enter the super-memory state. In the super-memory state, Lin Yuan carefully savored the swamp world's language for a few minutes. Then, under the Medusa demon's astonished expression, he asked, "Where is there a large piece of land nearby? Is there a large piece of land nearby that has relatively rich resources and is closed off?" As a highly intelligent life form, the Medusa demon could not understand why this life form in front of her could not even speak clearly. Now, the words that came out of his mouth sounded so pleasant and fluent. Despite being astonished, the Medusa demon did not dare to neglect Lin Yuan's question. She carefully recalled for a long time before replying, "Previously, when I was pregnant with Wendy, I passed by a place. Previously, when I was pregnant with Wendy, I passed by a place. This place has the large piece of land that you mentioned, and it is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. At the same time, this place has rich swamp crocodiles that I can control. However, there are 3 swamp crocodiles there, and I was chased out of that territory by these 3 swamp crocodiles. Although the strongest of the 3 swamp crocodiles is also class 6, I didn't dare to have a conflict with them while I was pregnant with Wendy. Otherwise, if I occupied that place, I wouldn't have encountered trouble like the swamp rock tortoise." Upon hearing the Medusa demon's words, Lin Yuan nodded. It turned out that the Medusa demon, who had become familiar with him and started to become slightly active, already had a name. Her name was Wendy. As for the large piece of land that the Medusa demon had mentioned and was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, it was indeed very suitable for Lin Yuan's initial development. It had to be known that the mountains in the swamp world were very luxurious. The mountains in the swamp world were also different from the mountains in the main world. The mountains in the swamp world were condensed from a large amount of swamp mud. These mountains were not made of rocks, but were no different from the black mud at the bottom of the swamp. Therefore, the mountains in the swamp world would not restrict the territory's future development. If Lin Yuan felt that these 3 mountains were an eyesore, he would just push them down. He could also use the soil in these 3 mountains to expand the land area, saving him a lot of pure earth elemental energy expenditure in the future. Lin Yuan immediately asked the Medusa, "Can you still find that place now?" The Medusa snake demon immediately nodded and said, "We, the Medusas, have been able to remember all the paths we have taken since the beginning. As long as we have walked past a place, we will never forget it. Moreover, the place I mentioned isn't far from here. If you want to go, with my speed, you can reach it in 3 months." Upon hearing the Medusa's words, Lin Yuan let out an awkward cough. The Medusa Naga's speed was not slow. The Medusa Naga had traveled for 3 months, and it was in the swamps where the Medusa Naga were most adept at. Even if the sky killer butterfly traveled at full speed, it would take at least an hour. Lin Yuan immediately waved his hand and stored the lizard ting into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He then let the Medusa snake demon climb onto the sky killer butterfly's back and point the way for it. The sky killer butterfly flapped its wings and flew in the direction that the Medusa snake demon pointed. When the sky killer butterfly flapped its wings and took off, it did not forget to separate two milky blue butterfly shadows to dig out the accumulated swamp soil in the swamp rock tortoise's body. It then used the blue butterfly shadows to hand the swamp soil to Lin Yuan's hand. The swamp rock tortoise's healing and attacks would consume the nutrients in the swamp soil. Lin Yuan did not know how much swamp soil this Class 7 swamp rock tortoise had devoured when it was alive. At that moment, there were only 13 pieces of mid-grade swamp soil left in the swamp rock tortoise's stomach. Apart from these 13 pieces of mid-grade swamp soil, there was also a piece of high-grade swamp soil called vermilion rust or soil. High-grade swamp soil, vermilion rust or soil, was considered a kind of high-grade swamp soil that was rather unorthodox and useless to most plant phase. However, it was a top-grade nourishment for a small number of metal-type plant phase. Lin Yuan planned to bring this piece of high-grade vermilion rust or soil to the return from faraway manor to nurture the gold petal peony, which he had promoted to bronze/legend. It was considered making the best use of it. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that if he wanted to collect swamp soil in the future, he would just have to kill more dimensional life forms, swamp rock tortoises. This was much easier than clearing the swamp crocodiles and then jumping into the swamp to dig out the swamp soil. If he had the chance in the future, he could even nurture some swamp rock tortoises and let them go out to search for swamp soil freely. This way, when each swamp rock tortoise returned, it would be equivalent to bringing back a swamp fortune bag full of unknown swamp soil. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that the bodies of the swamp crocodiles and swamp rock tortoises that had been killed by the swamp rock tortoises had a large number of decaying fungi. Some of these decaying fungi had already grown into umbrella-shaped bodies that were over a meter tall within an hour. It could be seen that the decaying fungi in the swamp world were much more active than in the swamp dimensional rift. The swamp that had just been soaked in blood was now completely devoid of any trace of pollution. Excluding the black mud underwater in the swamp world, Lin Yuan felt that the environment of the swamp world was even cleaner than the main world. After storing the swamp soil, Lin Yuan used the swamp world's language to speak to Snake Medusa, Wendy, on his wrist. "Wendy, be my contract partner, okay?" When Wendy heard Lin Yuan call her name and ask her a question, she lifted her small head. However, Wendy did not know what Lin Yuan was referring to as a contract partner. Immediately, Wendy thought of the rainbow fish coat that she had just eaten. As soon as she recalled the taste of the rainbow fish coat, Wendy felt a little reluctant to part with it. "After Wendy becomes your contract partner, can I eat the crispy grilled slices just now?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan smiled brightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. "After Wendy becomes my contract partner, all my things will be Wendy's. At that time, apart from the grilled slices just now, I can give Wendy other delicious things to eat." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wendy happily wagged her small tail. However, Wendy did not immediately agree to Lin Yuan. Instead, she turned to look at her mother. The Medusa snake demon was completely stunned by the speed of the predator butterfly at this time. The second was even faster. End of this chapter. Chapter 960. The Medusa snake demon could clearly feel the power of the killer butterfly. Coupled with the apostles' fawning and respect towards Lin Yuan, the Medusa demoness wouldn't refuse, be it for herself or Wendy. After seeing her mother nod, Wendy climbed from Lin Yuan's wrist to Lin Yuan's shoulder and finally all the way to Lin Yuan's ear. She leaned her head against Lin Yuan's ear and said softly, "Don't worry. Wendy is willing." Upon hearing that Snake Medusa Wendy was willing, Lin Yuan gently placed his hand on Wendy's ear. Then he circulated his mental power and contracted Wendy. After the contract ended, Lin Yuan's spiritual energy and Wendy's spiritual energy formed a spiritual connection. This made Wendy and Lin Yuan even closer. Due to the addition of the Medusa snake demon on the back of the killer sky butterfly, its body size had doubled. Moreover, the slaughter sky butterfly dutifully propped up an energy shield while flying, so that Lin Yuan, the Medusa, and Medusa Wendy, who were on its back, would not be affected by the airflow. As the slaughter sky butterfly flapped its wings and flew, Lin Yuan found that the space in the swamp world was far more stable than in the main world. After the sky killer butterfly entered full-speed flight, the space of the swamp world did not ripple like in the main world. This was probably why there were dimensional rifts in the origin world. Now that he had nothing to do on the slaughter sky butterfly's back, he decided to carry out a perfect source baptism on Wendy, who he had already contracted. Lin Yuan summoned Princess, who got instructions and danced on the slaughter sky butterfly's back. 100 silk threads wrapped around Wendy's body, which was less than 30 centimeters long. Then, a faint amber-colored source power was injected into Wendy's body. Seeing the sudden change of events, especially the hundreds of threads wrapped around her daughter's body, the Medusa immediately became worried. However, he didn't dare to make any drastic movements. At this time, the Medusa snake demon saw that her daughter, who had transformed into a snake, had suddenly turned into the form of a Medusa. After that, she kept changing back and forth between her Medusa form and snake form. Lin Yuan had also been observing the snake Medusa undergoing the perfect source baptism. He had not expected that the snake Medusa would actually return to a half-human state during the perfect source baptism. In her Medusa form, Wendy looked no more than 5 or 6 years old. She had dark green hair, pure white skin, and big green eyes. She looked like a porcelain doll. During the process of Wendy's Medusa form and snake form, Lin Yuan found that the color of her dark green snake body was getting lighter little by little. In the end, it turned into an emerald green that was almost identical to the leaves of the jasmine lily. As a result, Wendy's entire snake body looked as if it was carved out of an extremely good jade. At the same time, Lin Yuan keenly noticed that Wendy's green pupils suddenly split into 3. Every pupil slowly turned into the shape of 3 flowers. 1, 2, 3. Finally, the 3 pupils turned into 3 flowers that clustered together to form a bouquet. The moment the pupils formed a bouquet, an eye-shaped totem appeared on Wendy's forehead. This eye-shaped totem also had a bouquet of 3 petals formed by Wendy's 3 pupils. The appearance of the eye-shaped totem indicated the end of Wendy's perfect source baptism. At that moment, the Class 6 Medusa snake demon looked at her daughter, Wendy, in horror. At the same time, it looked at Lin Yuan with an unprecedented fear in its eyes. In the Class 6 Medusa snake demon's understanding, apostles were the most mysterious and powerful existences. It was a supreme honor to become an apostle's believer. The Class 6 Medusa snake demon really could not understand what kind of power could make the life in front of it create an apostle. Could it be that the legend was true? After completing the source baptism, Wendy twisted her jade-like snake body and came in front of Lin Yuan. She blinked her big, watery eyes and reached out her hand. Upon seeing Wendy reach out her hand, Lin Yuan was almost melted by Wendy's cuteness. At that moment, Wendy looked 5 or 6 years old, very similar to Chu Si's age when he had just taken her to seek survival. Lin Yuan could not help but recall the time when he had pulled her to struggle. Lin Yuan picked Wendy up, but he felt a little strange when he looked at her emerald green hair. As a Medusa, Wendy's hair should be snake hair, right? Why did Wendy's hair look like a normal human's? Besides, Wendy was originally a snake Medusa. How did she turn into a Medusa after the perfect source-type baptism? Just as Lin Yuan was thinking, Wendy in his arms turned into a 30-centimeter-long snake that looked like it was carved out of jade. Wendy climbed down from Lin Yuan's arms and came in front of the Medusa snake demon. She once again turned into a humanoid Medusa and opened her hand to her mother. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan knew that Wendy could change back and forth between snake and Medusa forms. However, upon seeing Wendy open her hand to her, the Class 6 Medusa snake demon no longer dared to hug Wendy. Lin Yuan thought to himself, if the snake Medusa snake demon had not become Shiteng's believer, she would have probably knelt in front of Wendy in reverence. This scene gave Lin Yuan a new understanding of the apostles. Apostle, instead of saying it was a title, it was better to say that it was a level of life. The life level of an apostle was definitely above dimensional life forms. Moreover, the hierarchy of this life level was already able to firmly suppress bloodline kinship. At that moment, Lin Yuan's heart was throbbing. Once Klein marked the location in the swamp world, Morbius would leave an imprint in the swamp world. He could finally check Wendy's, Shiteng's, and the Medusa snake demon's attributes. Soon, the butchering butterfly flew to the place that the Medusa snake demon had pointed out. When he saw this place, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. This place was exactly the same as the Medusa snake demon had described. Outside the 3 mountains made of swamp mud, there was not a large swamp. Instead, there were fine pieces of land interspersed in the swamp. These pieces of land divided the swamp's waterways, making it very difficult for large swamp lifeforms to survive in this swamp. Lin Yuan was very satisfied with the environment in front of him. It could be said that the environment in front of him met his requirements. It could also meet the growth needs of the endless summer sacred sources Arakoa orchid sprout. Looking at the land under his feet, Lin Yuan's expression changed, and a faint killing intent surged out of his body. Next, I have to clean up this land. Chapter 961. Lin Yuan did not need the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters here. They fed on swamp crocodiles, and it was reasonable to reduce the number of swamp crocodiles in the territory to a certain extent. However, Lin Yuan now had Wendy and the Class 6 Medusa, who were born with the ability to control swamp crocodiles. Therefore, the more swamp crocodiles in this water area, the better it was for Lin Yuan. Moreover, dimensional lifeforms like the crocodile-eating swamp otters did not have high intelligence and were small in size. They were very good at hiding and were very territorial. He had seized the territory of 3 swamp crocodile-eating otters. If he didn't kill these 3 swamp crocodile-eating otters, he would be constantly harassed by them for revenge. The harassment and revenge would continue until the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters recaptured this territory. Therefore, Lin Yuan simply issued an order to the slaughter sky butterfly to kill all the dimensional lifeforms in the middle of the 3 swamp mountains indiscriminately. In any case, there would not be any overly powerful dimensional lifeforms in the territory controlled by the 3 Class 6 crocodile-eating swamp otters. Even if there were some powerful dimensional lifeforms, they should be expelled like how the crocodile-eating swamp otters had expelled the Medusa. Lin Yuan wanted to completely control this land and bring endless summer over tomorrow morning to plant the sacred source life form Arakoa orchid sprout on this land. He had to ensure that there was no dimensional life form in this land that could harm the young Arakawa orchid sprout. It was not that Lin Yuan did not think of letting Wendy or Shiteng take in the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters as believers. However, based on Lin Yuan's conversation with Shiteng through Genius's interconnection tale, he knew that it was not easy for Shiteng, an apostle, to recruit believers. It was not easy for Shiteng to take in believers, but it did not mean that Shiteng could not take in believers wantonly. As an apostle, when Shiteng took in believers to obtain the power of faith, he also had to feed back a portion of the totem's power to the believers. He had to form a totem imprint on the believers. The formation of the totem imprint on the believers consumed the power in Shiteng's front body. The power in the totem could slowly increase after obtaining the power of faith from the believers. However, this slow increase required a process and could not be replenished in a short time. According to Shiteng's estimation, after Shiteng took in the Class 6 Medusa as his believers, the Medusa spent nearly half a day praying every day to produce the power of faith. It would take nearly a month to replenish Shiteng's consumption. In other words, Shiteng's front body's totem would only be strengthened a month after taking in the Medusa as his believers. The swamp world was full of danger. It was very possible that the believers that Shiteng had just recruited might have met with some accident and turned into nutrients for the scavenging fungi. The death of each believer was a significant blow to a new apostle like Shiteng. Thus, Shiteng had to be very careful in choosing his believers. Swamp, 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 swamp eat. Swamp, swamp, swamp otters could. The swamp crocodile-eating swamp crocodile-eating swamp swamp creatures with creatures. That wolf wolf. Swamp otters had potential. Was really to have. SW. Just like what the level 6 Medusa demon had said, if it wasn't for the fact that it was pregnant with Wendy, the level 6 Medusa demon would have wanted to fight the 3 crocodile-eating swamp otters of the same level. Thus, dimensional life forms like the swamp otters were not considered strong. When the Medusa sensed the murderous aura in Lin Yuan's body, her heart tightened. As a dimensional life form that had lived in the swamp world for a long time, the Medusa knew that she could not control her life and death in the face of powerful life forms. Powerful life forms could deprive any life in front of them according to their preferences. At that moment, the Medusa heard an indifferent and gentle female voice. Lin Yuan, you just said that you want to clean up this land. Are you going to kill all the dimensional life forms in this land? Lin Yuan nodded and said, Slaughter Sky Butterfly, I'll have to trouble you. Slaughtering Butterfly, I'll have to trouble you. Leave none of the dimensional creatures in these 3 mountains alive. But you don't have to care about the dimensional life forms outside the mountains. The Medusa was stunned for a moment when she heard the gentle female voice. As a creature of the swamp, the Medusa could not understand the language spoken by the gentle female voice at all. However, before the Medusa snake demon could think further, the next scene that happened made the Medusa snake demon widen her eyes in horror. The sky was covered by the milky blue butterflies that filled the sky. Layers of butterfly shadows quietly scattered on the land of the 3 mountains like petals. As a dimensional life form with high intelligence, the Medusa had a strong perception of life. The Medusa could sense that after the milky blue butterfly shadows scattered on the 3 mountains, the originally lively life forms in the 3 mountains immediately lost their vitality. Under the milky blue butterfly shadows, those life forms that lost their vitality didn't even have the time to wail. When the sky was filled with butterfly shadows, the carnivorous sky butterflies spoke to Lin Yuan again. Lin Yuan, there are no longer any dimensional life forms in these 3 mountains. Even the swamp insects that feed on soil have been cleared by me. The 3 mountains are excellent natural barriers that can perfectly isolate the dimensional life forms living in the swamp. At that time, as long as I guard the empty entrance, I can ensure that no dimensional life forms will surge in the land of the 3 mountains. Upon hearing the killer butterfly's words, Lin Yuan immediately said, Let's land at the entrance of the 3 mountains. Let's land at the entrance of the 3 mountains. We can take a look at the environment there. If he had cleared such an area in the main world, Lin Yuan would still need to clean this area. However, in the swamp world, this behavior was completely superfluous. In about an hour, all the dead swamp dimensional life forms would disappear without a trace under the decomposition of the carrion-eating fungi. At that moment, Wendy climbed onto Lin Yuan's body and transformed into her Medusa form. Lin Yuan hugged Wendy and felt like he was hugging the young Chu Ci. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's instructions, the killer butterfly flapped its wings and appeared at the entrance of the 3 mountains. Standing on the land at the edge of the 3 mountains' entrances, Lin Yuan immediately found his feet sinking into the soil. This time, Lin Yuan didn't flap the 4 black wings on his back because he wanted to feel how much water this swamp world's land contained. Lin Yuan found that when he stood on the land at the edge of the 3 mountains with his weight of 65 kilograms, the middle of his calves would sink directly into the soil. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 962. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows as he felt the wetness of the land. However, Lin Yuan had already expected the humidity of the land here, because in front of the 3 mountains was a vast swamp that stretched as far as the eye could see. The water in the swamp moistened the land at the border, so it was normal for the land at the border to contain a lot of water. When Lin Yuan walked toward the interior of the 3 mountains, the water content in the land would decrease. However, due to the existence of large swamps, even the soil in the center of the 3 mountains would be maintained in a relatively moist state. Lin Yuan only saw a large number of strips in the swamp in front of him. These strips were attached to the water surface like driftwood that people could step on. However, these things were not driftwood, but swamp crocodiles that were disguised in the swamp and waiting for the swamp beasts to drink water at the edge of the swamp. However, the swamp beasts in the interior of the 3 mountains had been slaughtered by the slaughter sky butterflies, so it was impossible for the swamp beasts to come to the edge of the swamp to drink water. These swamp crocodiles were not stupid. If they could not wait for the swamp beasts within a period of time, they would leave this large swamp. They would go to other places to forage for food. Lin Yuan was not willing to let these swamp crocodiles leave. In fact, in Lin Yuan's opinion, these swamp crocodiles could be used as a barrier to protect the land in the middle of the three mountains. They could prevent dimensional life forms or swamp beasts from swimming through the swamp from other lands and coming to this land to develop and live. Lin Yuan turned his head and asked the Class 6 Medusa, who was standing beside him with an obvious look of fear on her face, "You said before that you can control the swamp crocodiles. You said that you can control the swamp crocodiles. I wonder if you can control the hundreds of swamp crocodiles at the edge of this swamp first? These swamp crocodiles are of some use to me." The Medusa hurriedly replied, "This is very simple. This is very simple. I only need to use my special talent to easily control these marsh crocodiles and keep them on the shore." "Are you keeping these swamp crocodiles to use as rations for Lord Apostle?" As she spoke, the Medusa demon had already gracefully twisted her body. Then obscure syllables came out of Medusa's throat, forming a strange melody. He could now use the swamp world's language to communicate freely with the dimensional life forms in the swamp world, so he could easily hear the meaning of Medusa's song. Lin Yuan did not feel that the Medusa's singing voice was very amazing. In comparison, the Medusa's singing voice was far inferior to Chime's. However, the swamp crocodiles at the shore clearly didn't think so. At this moment, the originally calm swamp instantly boiled. All the marsh crocodiles in Lin Yuan's line of sight were swimming toward the Medusa demon. Based on the size of these swamp crocodiles, he could determine that they were mostly Class 3 or Class 4. Among them was a 7-meter-long giant swamp crocodile. Based on its size, Lin Yuan could determine that it was at Class 7. He didn't expect that the Class 6 Medusa would actually be able to attract Class 7 swamp crocodiles with her singing. From the looks of it, this Level 7 swamp crocodile was lying beside the Medusa demon, but did not have the slightest intention of opening its huge mouth to attack the Medusa demon. He had just heard the Medusa say that the ability to control the marsh crocodiles came from its innate talent. However, what was a talent? At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the singing Medusa speak to him. "My lord, if you wish to reserve rations for the apostle, these marsh crocodiles shouldn't be enough for the apostle to eat for a few days. If you wish to control the marsh crocodiles, you just need to pour a large amount of fresh blood into the swamp. Before the fresh blood is digested by the carrion-eating fungi, you will be able to attract a large number of marsh crocodiles. But try not to pour too much of the blood of high-class life forms. Otherwise, the marsh crocodiles that are attracted will be too powerful. Even if my innate talent is the marsh crocodile song, and I have a stronger control over the marsh crocodiles than the other Medusa demons, I can only use the marsh crocodile song to appease and control Class 7 marsh crocodiles that are one class higher than me. If I encounter a Class 8 marsh crocodile, even if I sing the marsh crocodile song, I will still be attacked by the Class 8 marsh crocodile. There is a Class 7 marsh crocodile here, and I will need to chant the marsh crocodile song for an hour to completely control it. You don't have to wait for me here. After I control these marsh crocodiles, I will find you based on your scent." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan was even more curious. Through the Medusa demon's introduction, Lin Yuan had a general idea of the Medusa demon's innate talent, the marsh crocodile song. As apostles, did Shi Teng and Wendy also have innate talents? To find out, Lin Yuan's top priority was to get Klein Hub to mark this land so that Morbius could leave a mark in the marsh world. He could also use true data to check the attributes of the marsh world dimensional lifeforms. At the same time, based on how the Medusa demon addressed him, Lin Yuan could feel the Medusa demon's respect and fear for him. In the marsh world, Sir Hu was a very respectful form of address for a superior. Lin Yuan waved his hand and summoned Shi Teng from the leaf-shaped diamond trapped spirit. When Lin Yuan saw Shi Teng, he immediately widened his eyes. Back when Shi Teng had devoured the Class 6 Medusa lizard, even though its 4 huge heads had 4 times the eating speed of a normal Medusa lizard, the Class 6 Medusa lizard's nearly 10-meter-long body was simply too huge. However, The Class 6 Medusa lizard's nearly 10-meter-long body was simply too huge. If Shiteng wanted to completely devour the entire Class 6 Medusa lizard, it would take at least half an hour. Lin Yuan simply stored Shiteng and the Class 6 Medusa lizard in the Diamond Fey storage box. However, he did not expect that Shiteng would actually evolve after eating the Class 6 Medusa lizard in the leaf-shaped Fey storage box. It had evolved from a Class 4-dimensional life form to a Class 5-dimensional life form. Shiteng's previous 16-meter-long body was already huge enough. Now, it should be at least 20 meters long from head to tail. Moreover, the change in Shiteng's body did not come from the length of its body but from its height and width. Although Shiteng, who had evolved from a 4th-level dimensional creature to a 5th-level dimensional creature, had only increased its body length by 4 meters, it was nearly twice as thick as before. At the same time, after Shiteng evolved into a Class 5-dimensional life form, its original 4 lizard heads had become 5. What surprised Lin Yuan the most was that each of Shiteng's 5 lizard heads had a single horn, which was different from the curved and forked horns of WRM species phase. At that moment, Shiteng, who had evolved into a Class 5-dimensional creature, had 5 horns on his 5 lizard heads that were straight and long in the shape of a spiral. They looked very similar to the spirals on Shiteng's tail. 166 Reading Network. Chapter 963. Every spiral horn on the lizard's head was nearly 2 meters long, which meant that the horn was very penetrative. If the 5-headed lizard charged forward, its head could be used as a headbutt. Even the Class 7 swamp rock tortoise's shell would not be able to withstand the lizard's headbutt. Looking at the lizard's sharper and thicker claws, Lin Yuan felt that the lizard was simply a physical killing machine. Lin Yuan looked at the lizard and said, "Stay here with the Medusa. You stay here with the Medusa demon. I'll come find you in a while." After saying that, he strode toward the interior of this land. After walking for about 10 minutes, Lin Yuan realized that the ground would no longer reach his calves when he walked. Instead, it only reached his ankles. After walking for a few more minutes, Lin Yuan stopped and threw an ethereal jellyfish's tentacle into the ground as a marker. The humidity here was undoubtedly the most suitable for the growth of the sacred source life form, the mountain green orchid sprout. After using the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle to mark the location, Lin Yuan flapped his 4 black wings and flew toward the center of the land surrounded by the 3 mountains. The land surrounded by the 3 mountains was not small. Lin Yuan had walked for 15 minutes and flew for another 5 minutes before reaching the center of the land. Lin Yuan estimated that the land surrounded by the 3 mountains should be about a quarter of Redbud City's Xia region. It was even bigger than a quarter of Redbud City's Xia region. Such an area was enough for Lin Yuan to develop and build. When he arrived at the center, Lin Yuan spoke to Morbius in his mind. "Morbius, I've decided to set the Klein Hub's location in the swamp world here." Morbius replied, "Lin Yuan, you've chosen a good place." "Yuan, the place you chose is really good. Most of the dimensional life forms in the swamp world like humidity. It should be very difficult for especially powerful swamp dimensional life forms to come to this place. Relying on the endless swamp to defend this area, the swamp always brings us surprises." While speaking, Morbius and Lin Yuan activated the Klein Hub together, and a red circular array immediately appeared on the ground. A Klein Hub identical to the one in the Spirit Lock spatial zone immediately appeared in the center of the red circular array. The moment the Klein Hub appeared in the swamp world, a door immediately opened in the swamp world. Lin Yuan walked through the door and realized that he had returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After crossing the portal through the Klein Hub in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he returned to the marked location in the swamp world. At this moment he finally had his base camp in the swamp world. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in his mind again. "Yuan, I've marked the swamp world. You can now check the true data of the dimensional life forms in the swamp world at any time." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan immediately looked at Wendy, who had fallen asleep in his arms at some point in time. Now, Wendy was like a small sloth, tightly hugging herself, the small tree. He used Morbius' true data on Wendy. Then, Wendy's attributes appeared in front of him. Exotic beast name: Snake Medusa, life form, Apostle exotic beast level, level 1, power of faith. Extremely weak, faith totem. Triflower snake pupil totem talent specialty frowny face snake descendants paradise. Can rapidly increase the growth speed of the snake phase around you. You can rapidly increase your strength through the venom of the snake phase around you. You can also cultivate the snake phase around you into your own snake hair. At the same time, you can purify the venom of the snake phase and transmit the venom through your eyes by using petrification. Wild plant affinity. Release your own aura and obtain the predatory plant's favor. At the same time, you can use singing to appease the predatory plant's emotions and obtain the predatory plant's protection. Power of faith frowny face blood person transformation. By injecting a portion of the totem's energy into the blood person's body, the blood person's life form can be transformed, allowing the blood person's life form to transform from an ordinary dimensional creature into a blessed believer through the power of the totem. Looking at Wendy's true data, Lin Yuan pondered in his mind. According to Wendy's true data, Lin Yuan could find that there was a huge difference between the attributes of dimensional life forms and phase. At the same time, Lin Yuan found that he had not guessed wrong. Apostles were indeed a kind of life form. Moreover, dimensional life forms like apostles could already use the power of faith. Faith came from the totem. At that moment, the power of faith contained in the triflower snake pupil totem on Wendy's forehead was extremely weak. Looking at Wendy's two talents, Lin Yuan raised his brows. Now, Lin Yuan finally knew why Wendy didn't have snake hair like other Medusas. Wendy's snake hair had to be nurtured by herself. Wendy could use the venom in the snake hair she had nurtured to enhance her eyes and release the venom through the petrifying ability of her eyes. In other words, the stronger the venom of the snake hair Wendy nurtured, the stronger the attack power of her eyes. Lin Yuan felt that Wendy was lucky to have signed a contract with him. After all, there were not many snake-dimensional life forms in the swamp world. Moreover, most of the snakes in the swamp world were huge, giant snake-dimensional life forms that did not have venom through their physical attacks. Even if Wendy nurtured these giant snake life forms that did not have venom into snake hair, it would not be of much help to Wendy. It was not easy to find and collect all kinds of snake phase in the vast swamp. However, the snake species phase in the main world were very rich in variety. Most of the snake phase in the main world were poison type. These poison-type snake phase would constantly increase their venom as their strength increased. At that time, Lin Yuan could take these venomous snake phase in the main world to the swamp world and nurture them into snake hair for Wendy. As Wendy continuously nurtured different snake phase with huge venom into snake hair, these different snake phase would all offer their venom to Wendy when she used the petrifying ability, forming a fierce mixed poison. Most importantly, Wendy could also increase her strength through the venom offered by the snake phase around her. Wendy's talent, the Snake Descendants Paradise, could quickly increase her strength. It might even surpass Wendy's mother, the Class 6 Medusa, in a very short time. As for Wendy's second talent, Wild Plant Affinity, Lin Yuan felt that it should be very similar to the Class 6 Medusa's talent, Swamp Crocodile Song. However, the Class 6 Medusa's Swamp Crocodile Song was targeted at dimensional life forms like the swamp crocodile. Wendy's Wild Plant Affinity was targeted at predatory plants at the top of the food chain in the swamp world. The end of this chapter. Chapter 964. Lin Yuan suddenly recalled that red thorn was also a predatory plant, but it was still fusing with the two source seeds and had yet to awaken. Wendy's second talent, Wild Plant Affinity, could make predatory plants feel close to each other. If red thorn completed its transformation and awakened, it should also be attracted to Wendy and become her good friend. Lin Yuan still had no clue about Wendy's power of faith's believer transformation. Power of faith's believer transformation was to inject a portion of the totem's energy into the believer's body to transform the believer's life form. The believer transformed from an ordinary dimensional life form to a blessed believer through the totem's power. Wendy had just become an apostle and did not have her own believer. Therefore, Lin Yuan could not let Wendy transform her believer's life form from an ordinary dimensional life form to a blessed believer. Lin Yuan felt that the power of faith's believer transformation should be an ability that all apostles shared. Of course, Lin Yuan had not used true data to check Shiteng's true data. Therefore, Lin Yuan was only guessing that the power of faith's believer transformation was an ability that all apostles shared. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the sound of the ground trembling. It was obvious that there was a huge creature running on the ground, and it was heading in his direction. Lin Yuan looked up and saw Shiteng galloping toward him with his 5 lizard heads swaying from afar. Shiteng's running speed was obviously faster than the Class 6 Medusa, but the Medusa was also moving its snake body with all its might to follow behind Shiteng. Lin Yuan immediately used true data to check on Shiteng. Alien beast name, Medusa monitor lizard, life form. Apostle alien beast level, Class 5's power of faith. Extremely weak apostle totem, multi-headed lizard beast totem talent specialty frowny face bone reinforcement. Reduces the speed of evolution and strengthens the bones with the nutrients absorbed by the body, greatly increasing the strength of the bones. Multi-headed body. Every time you level up, you will grow an extra head. At the same time, the previous head will be strengthened. The heads will be controlled by a single soul, and each head will be equal in strength. As long as one head is intact, you will be able to survive. After the head is destroyed, you can replenish your energy with food, allowing the broken head to regrow. Power of faith. Believer transformation. By injecting a portion of the totem's energy into the believer's body, the blood person's life form can be transformed, allowing the blood person's life form to transform from an ordinary dimensional creature into a blessed believer through the power of the totem. At a glance, he found that his guess was indeed correct. The power of faith was indeed an ability all apostles had. Right now, Shiteng and Wendy's power of faith was extremely weak. He felt that when he strengthened the power of faith in Wendy and the lizard totem, it should not be as simple as transforming the believers. Now that he had seen Shiteng's true data, he finally understood why there had been such a huge change when Shiteng had advanced from Class 4 to Class 5. Based on Shiteng's multi-headed body, Lin Yuan knew that it would grow a new head every time it leveled up. At the same time, the newly grown head would be strengthened. For example, when Shiteng leveled up from level 4 to level 5, each of his heads grew a 2-meter-long spiral horn. This was the power of Shiteng's multi-headed body. Based on the data of Shiteng's multi-headed body, Lin Yuan knew that the new heads would not increase Shiteng's weaknesses. Instead, each head was a weapon that Shiteng could use to attack, defend, or abandon in battle. This was because once Shiteng's heads were damaged in battle, they could grow again after a few meals to obtain nutrients. This was tantamount to greatly improving Shiteng's survivability. Moreover, every time Shiteng leveled up, the changes in its heads might bring Lin Yuan a surprise like this 2-meter-long spiral horn. As for Shiteng's other talent, the seemingly ordinary bone reinforcement, Lin Yuan did not feel that it was of little value. Instead, he felt that the bone reinforcement was more useful than having a multi-headed body to some extent. After becoming an apostle, Shiteng's body was so huge that Lin Yuan found it unbelievable. It was now nearly 20 meters long at Class 5. It was hard to imagine how huge it would be when it reached Class 8. The larger a life form was, the higher the requirement for bones. Strong bones could enhance the life form's mobility. This allowed the life form to not be crushed by its huge body and weight when moving. It could be said that Shiteng could grow such a huge body and become so thick after leveling up. It could be said that a large part of it was indirectly caused by the bone reinforcement. The strong bones also allowed Shiteng to use its physical strength to collide and attack in battle. At the same time, the sharp horns, claws, and teeth on its head were also part of the bones. The bone reinforcement also imperceptibly strengthened Shiteng's offensive power. Based on Shiteng's talent, Lin Yuan knew that Shiteng was an out-and-out physical-type apostle. Wendy was considered a spell-type apostle. Wendy and Shiteng had one spell, so they could make up for and help each other in the swamp world. At the same time, Wendy's talent, wild plant affinity, allowed Wendy to collect predatory plants in the swamp world as her believers. Xiteng could collect other intelligent life forms besides predatory plants as its believers. Wendy and Xiteng could also choose their believers without disturbing each other. This was currently the best state. Lin Yuan did not intend to use source power to conduct a perfect source baptism on more dimensional life forms in a short time to create more apostles. It would be a waste to throw out 100 portions of source power to create more apostles. Moreover, more apostles would develop in this land that was only 1/4 the size of the Xia region, and there would be conflicts over the collection of believers. The princess used the source power absorbed from the law source crystal to enhance the complete laws, which was equivalent to subtly increasing Lin Yuan's strength. Previously, Lin Yuan had used the Dark Crow Withering Strike, which was produced in Holy Sword mode in Dark Death's nomological world, and he had deeply experienced the benefits of sword skills. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to transform a complete set of laws into a nomological world to obtain new sword skills to enhance his strength. However, Lin Yuan still needed to think about how to let the princess evolve into a world's laws. With the power of Dark Death's nomological world, Lin Yuan was no longer in a hurry to constantly add more trump cards. The Dark Crow Withering Strike formed in Dark Death's nomological world was an offensive ability. The first was even more powerful. End of this chapter. Chapter 965. In terms of attack, the Dark Crow Withering Strike was enough for Lin Yuan to use. Therefore, Lin Yuan planned to focus more on functionality in the choice of the new law world. Besides observing Xiteng's true data, Lin Yuan did not forget to observe the Class 6 Medusa Demon's true data. Alien Beast Name: Medusa Demon, Life Form. Dimensional Life Form, Alien Beast Level. Class 6, Totem Belief. Multi-headed Lizard Beast Totem Talent Specialty Frowny Face Swamp Crocodile Song. Uses singing to summon swamp crocodiles that are not higher than the user's level. At the same time, during the singing phase, the swamp crocodiles that are not higher than the user's level within a certain range enter a submissive state. The Class 6 Medusa Demon's life form was a dimensional life form, so its data was much simpler than Xiteng's and Wendy's apostles. Moreover, Class 6 Medusa Demons only had one innate ability. Xiteng and Wendy should have transformed into apostles under the perfect source baptism and obtained a new talent specialty. Lin Yuan had seen the Class 6 Medusa Demon's talent specialty, Swamp Crocodile Song. The talent specialty, Swamp Crocodile Song, was equivalent to enhancing the Medusa Demon's ability to control swamp crocodiles. This ability to control swamp crocodiles, which were the highest at Class 7, was also a great help to Lin Yuan. At the very least, Lin Yuan did not need to worry about Xiteng's food in the future. Looking at Xiteng, who ran close to him, Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and asked Xiteng in the swamp language. Xiteng, will using the power of faith to transform the Medusa Demon's believers consume a lot of the power of faith in the totem? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Xiteng immediately yelled out syllables and communicated with Lin Yuan seriously. Master, my power of faith is extremely weak. I can only transform the power of faith in 3 believer totems at most. Turn these believers who have been transformed by the power of faith into believers of grace. The power of faith in my body is still very weak. After transforming the Medusa Demon, I'll enter a weak state within 3 days due to the overdraft of faith. The Class 6 Medusa Demon, who had spent a lot of effort to keep up with Xiteng, heard Lin Yuan's words, and its eyes flickered. Based on the conversation between Lin Yuan and Lord Xiteng, they had the intention of promoting themselves from ordinary believers to of blessed believers. In the swamp world, the swamp dimensional life forms had no fixed residence and had no home. Even when he was sleeping, he had to be extremely vigilant. If he wasn't careful, he would lose his life. Believers who could become apostles would have their bodies engraved with the totems of the apostles they believed in. Believers with totem marks had a higher status in the swamp world than dimensional creatures without totem marks. Having the apostle's totem on her body, for the Medusa Demoness, was already an unmatched glory. Medusa never thought that she would immediately have the opportunity to become a believer of grace right after becoming a believer. One had to know that becoming a blessed believer would increase one's life tier. At that time, according to the totem they believed in, their bodies and special abilities would be strengthened once. Lin Yuan asked after hearing Shi Ting's words. What benefits do you get from promoting your believers to favored believers? Hearing that, Shi Ting shook his 5 heads and said, the amount of faith the favored chosen receives every day is far higher than that of ordinary believers. At the same time, the favored chosen also has the ability to obtain faith from the life forms they worship. The blessed believers can collect this faith and offer it to the apostles. This Medusa's talent is the swamp crocodile's song. It can control the swamp crocodiles, so it can extract faith from the swamp crocodiles. I don't think it's a bad deal to transform this Medusa demon from a normal believer to a blessed believer through the power of faith. Lin Yuan nodded in response. There's no harm in transforming this Medusa demon into a believer right now. During this period of time when you are weak, you will stay on this land obediently. I will let the sky killer butterfly protect your safety. Wait until you recover from the exhaustion caused by overconsumption of faith energy, then wander around the territory. The Medusa demon saw that Lin Yuan and Lord Shi Ting had decided to promote her from an ordinary believer to a favored believer. She was pleasantly surprised. At this time, the Medusa felt that she should show off. On one hand, it was to repay Lord Shi Ting, and on the other, it was to make Lord Shi Ting value him more. Lord Shi Ting, my name is Scaled Concubine. The Medusa lizard that I contracted is dead. My snake hair can continue to secrete pheromones that attract Medusa lizards. I can use the pheromones to attract Medusa demon lizards that want to find the Medusa demon lizards. When the time comes, Lord Shi Ting can choose to take these Medusa lizards in as believers or eat them. Upon hearing the Medusa demon Scaled Concubine's words, Lin Yuan looked at her in surprise. The Scaled Concubine was simply a black widow. Under normal circumstances, black widows would kill their partners in order to breed their partner's descendants. The Scaled Concubine only used the pheromones to seduce the Medusa lizards, but she did not form a contract with them. Instead, she tricked these Medusa lizards into serving as Shi Ting's rations so that Shi Ting could advance quickly. Lin Yuan only wanted Storm to praise the Scaled Concubine for 5 minutes. The Scaled Concubine was really a little genius. With the Scaled Concubine around, Shi Ting had the swamp crocodile's rations and the Medusa lizard's flesh needed to evolve. There was no need for Lin Yuan to think of a way to prepare for Shi Ting. When Shi Ting heard the Medusa demon Scaled Concubine's words, he used the side of his head to give her a big tumble. It was a reward for the Scaled Concubine. Before the Scaled Concubine could get up from the heavy blow, the multi-headed lizard totem on Shi Ting's front body had already lit up with amber light. An amber halo was injected from Shi Ting's multi-headed lizard totem to the totem imprint on the Scaled Concubine's body, which Shi Ting had set as a chosen. Under the injection of the amber power of faith, the skin on the Scaled Concubine's body became wrinkled, as if a layer of skin was about to fall off her body. Although the Medusa demon was a humanoid creature, it would still molt like a snake fae every time its body shape changed. When the wrinkled snakeskin appeared on the Scaled Concubine's body, the color of the wrinkled snakeskin became darker and darker. It was impossible to see the situation inside. Only when the multi-headed lizard totem on Shi Ting's front body no longer transmitted amber energy did the Scaled Concubine twist in the thick snakeskin that wrapped around her. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw 4 hands penetrate the snakeskin and come out. Chapter 966. The 4 slender and bony hands tore the wrinkled skin around the Scaled Concubine into pieces. At this moment, the Scaled Concubine, who had transformed from a believer to a believer, was taller than before. After the Medusa stood up, most of her snake body was stuck to the ground. This made the actual height of the Scaled Concubine only around 1.7 meters. The current Scaled Concubine's height had risen to 1.9 meters, 10 centimeters taller than Lin Yuan. Compared to the increase in size, Lin Yuan felt that the biggest change in the scaled concubine was her newly grown arms. In the past, the scaled concubine could shoot 3 energy arrows in an instant with only 2 hands. Right now, the scaled concubine, who only had 2 hands, could shoot out twice the amount of energy arrows, greatly increasing the scaled concubine's attack power. Moreover, the snake hair on the scaled concubine's head had become even thicker. One had to know that the Medusa Naga's hair was not just for decoration. In close combat, the Medusa Naga's hair was the Medusa Naga's strongest means of attack. Lin Yuan used true data to check on the scaled concubine, who had transformed into a favored believer. Exotic beast name: Medusa monster, life form. Dimensional creature, blessed believer. Exotic beast level: 6 level, totem worship. Multi-headed lizard totem. Innate skills: frowny face, swamp crocodile song. Uses singing to summon swamp crocodiles that are not higher than your own level. At the same time, any swamp crocodiles that hear your song will feel close to you and gather around you. Swamp crocodiles that were no higher than 2 levels than themselves would enter a state of obsession after listening to the song for an hour. They would then be able to perfectly control the song in any form. He found that after the Medusa scaled concubine became a chosen, her life form had changed under true data. Apart from the change in her life form, the Medusa snake demon scaled bell did not gain any new talents after becoming a believer. Scaled concubine still only had 1 talent, but at this moment, scaled concubine's talent, the swamp crocodile song, had undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously, the scaled concubine's talent, the swamp crocodile's song, could only control a swamp crocodile that was no higher than her own level. Now, the upper limit was no higher than 2 levels. In other words, the Medusa demon could already use the swamp crocodile's song to control a level 8 swamp crocodile. Moreover, this kind of control also changed from the previous submissive state to perfect control of any form. In other words, the Medusa's ability to control the swamp crocodiles had also improved. Lin Yuan raised his head and asked the Medusa demon, who had just become Grace's believer, "Is the number of swamp crocodiles you control stronger than before?" Lin Yuan asked this because he wanted to understand more about the scaled concubine's control over the marsh crocodiles. The scaled concubine hurriedly replied when she heard Lin Yuan's question. "Previously, I could only control 200 to 300 swamp crocodiles at most, and I couldn't control more than 3 Class 7 swamp crocodiles. And now, all the swamp crocodiles that hear my song will feel close to me and want to gather around me. I now have the ability to gather swamp crocodiles that is several times stronger than before. At the same time, the number of swamp crocodiles I can control has increased by at least 5 times. I should be able to control 1,000 swamp crocodiles without any pressure, but controlling 1,500 might be a little difficult. At the same time, I should be able to control 3 level 8 swamp crocodiles if there are no accidents. As for level 7 swamp crocodiles, I should be able to control dozens of them without any pressure." Hearing scaled concubine's words, Lin Yuan clapped his hands. This way, the marsh crocodile barrier at the edge of this land would become stronger. After looking at the time, Lin Yuan prepared to leave the marsh crocodile world. It was already around 3 a.m., and Lin Yuan let out a sigh. "I've stayed up late again." Lin Yuan wanted to hand Wendy, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, to the scaled concubine and let her carry her. Recalling how the scaled concubine had not dared to carry Wendy before, Lin Yuan simply placed Wendy on Shiteng's back. He let Shiteng take care of Wendy. Shiteng, who was also an apostle, would not have any fear of Wendy. The marsh world's internal land had been determined. Moreover, the defensive structures had also been established under the scaled concubine's talent, swamp crocodile song. However, this was far from Lin Yuan's goal of developing the marsh world. As for the resources to be used to develop the marsh world, Lin Yuan would have to think of a way from the main world. Lin Yuan left the slaughter sky butterfly in the marsh world while he returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After returning to the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan took off his spirit chi clothes that were stained with a lot of swamp mud and left the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After exiting the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan planned to go downstairs and take advantage of the night to plan how to build the land in the center of the 3 mountains in the marsh world. When he arrived at the hall, Lin Yuan found Hu Quan making something on the table with his fingers. Beside him was the wood-weaving house centipede, which had been upgraded by Hu Quan. At this time, the main residence did not turn on the lights, but the spirit chi released by the 99.5 fortune ranches in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank caused the completely jade-textured furniture in the main residence's hall to emit a soft light. However, the light emitted by the completely jade-textured wood furniture in the main residence was far inferior to the object in Hu Quan's hand. Lin Yuan took a closer look and found that Hu Quan was weaving the various heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls with the completely jade-textured wood thread spat out by the wood-weaving house centipede. Lin Yuan saw a total of 24 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls of various elements being woven into an exquisite string of beads in Hu Quan's hands. This string of beads made Lin Yuan want to take it and play with it carefully. Hu Quan also saw Lin Yuan and waved the string of beads in his hand when Lin Yuan walked over. Lin Yuan, what do you think of this string of beads I made? Recently, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and the Heavenly Craft Pavilion are going to jointly hold a large-scale opening auction. I intend to put this string of beads made from 24 heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls at the auction to show off. But I think ordinary people shouldn't be able to afford this string of beads made from heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls and my Class 5 spirit craftsmanship. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan gave Hu Quan a thumbs up and said, "Uncle Hu's craftsmanship is really getting better and better. Uncle Hu's craftsmanship is getting better and better. These completely jade-textured wood threads are even softer than silk. Under Uncle Hu's weaving, these heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls without perforations are perfectly combined. Each knot exudes the unique noble aura of completely jade-textured wood. Not only did it not lower the grade of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, but it also lessened the heavy color of the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls." At this point, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of something and said to Hu Quan, "Let's go." After saying that, Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out the brocade box that he had been carefully placing on the table in the spirit lock spatial zone. After saying that, Lin Yuan shook his hand and took out the brocade box that he had carefully placed on the table in the spirit lock spatial zone. When Hu Quan saw the item in the brocade box, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Even though he was a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he could not help but say with a trembling voice, Lin Yuan opened the brocade box in front of Hu Quan. When Hu Quan saw the item in the brocade box, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Lin Yuan, where did you get this brocade box of good stuff?" You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.